Chapter 279 The Restless Crown Prince. Chapter 279 The Restless Crown Prince. Usually, Jun Linyuan could enter the state of meditation as soon as he closed his eyes, but now, he had a big frown on his face. He was less than 15 minutes into his cultivation, and little Feng Wu had popped into his head no less than 10 times. Jun Linyuan opened his eyes and looked very grim. For the first time in his life, Jun Linyuan realized that he couldn't clear his head of distracting thoughts. He would go to sleep then. Climbing into his bed in frustration, Jun Linyuan pulled the duvet into his arms. However, as soon as he closed his eyes, little Feng Wu was there again, giving him a teasing wink. Jun Linyuan was astonished. Turning around in frustration, he tried lying on his other side. When he was finally getting a little sleepy, what happened earlier in the lake came back into his head like a slideshow. Jun Linyuan was amazed by how retentive his memory was. He remembered everything vividly, from when Feng Wu took off her undergarment to everything after that. The look in her eyes, her facial expressions, her movements, her voice. Blood rushed to Jun Linyuan's head. Thud! Jun Linyuan bolted up and punched the bed. Was this Feng Wu girl a witch or something? The bed was a makeshift one built from wood, and naturally, it couldn't withstand that punch. It crumbled with a crack. Feng Sun hadn't gone to bed yet and had been walking around Jun Linyuan's tent in circles. From Jun Linyuan's position, Feng Sun looked like a lonely wandering ghost. Hearing the noise, Feng Sun rushed into the tent immediately. Boss Jun! Boss Jun! However, what Feng Sun saw astonished him. Jun Linyuan sat there among broken pieces of wood with a duvet in his arms. The guy was too shocked to react. Feng Sun had never seen Jun Linyuan in such a sorry state before. This was Jun Linyuan, the all-powerful, resolute, and merciless crown prince who placed martial prowess above all else. However, the look on his face now reminded Feng Sun of a 5-year-old. Feng Sun wanted to suppress his laughter, but, ha 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 ha, Feng Sun laughed until the muscles in his belly ached and tears rolled down his cheeks. Shut up! Jun Linyuan snapped. Unable to fight back his laughter, Feng Sun dashed out of the tent and guffawed. Jun Linyuan sat there in embarrassment. He would never have been discovered in this state if not for that girl. The vindictive young crown prince found another grudge to hold against Feng Wu. While Feng Sun was finally able to stop laughing, he had also caught the attention of everyone else. Yan Yan was the first to react to his laughter. Rushing to his side, she asked, "What was that? What happened? Cousin, what's so funny? Tell me." Feng Sun ignored Yan Yan's question and snorted at her. "Go back to bed. You're going back to your mother first thing in the morning. This is not the right place for you." Yan Yan didn't reply, but she had already made up her mind. No matter what happened, she was going back to the imperial capital with these people here. She had successfully chased Feng Wu away without breaking a sweat, hadn't she? Ha ha ha! Yan Yan was so pleased with herself for that achievement. There, Xian Yi pointed to the northeast and narrowed his eyes. They saw flames rising over there, lighting up the night sky. The look on Feng Sun's face changed. "That's in the direction of the route back to the imperial capital." Xian Yi nodded. "And little Feng Wu left in that direction." Xian Yi nodded again. Without thinking, Feng Sun rushed into Jun Linyuan's tent and cried out, "Boss Jun, help!" Jun Linyuan's face was as unruffled as an old well. He darted a haughty look at Feng Sun. "It's little Feng Wu." Chapter 280 Setting Out? Chapter 280 Setting Out? "It's little Feng Wu." Feng Sun cried out, looking panic-stricken. The emotionless mask Jun Linyuan wore cracked and his eyes flickered, reminding one of 1,000 shattered stars. However, Feng Sun was too immersed in his own anxiety to notice the change in the crown prince's eyes. "What about her?" Jun Linyuan didn't let his face betray him. "She's in trouble. Real trouble. Feng Sun pulled Jun Linyuan out of the tent and gestured to the northeast. Look, a fire has broken out over there. It must be little Feng Wu. Jun Linyuan gave Feng Sun a haughty look. And why should I care? Feng Sun almost jumped up. Boss Jun, I know you don't like her, but it's human lives we're talking about here. How can you be so cold? Forget it. I might as well count on Feng Wu getting her cultivation back first than wait for you to lend me a hand. Do whatever you want. I'm going to help little Feng Wu now. After that, Feng Sun dashed off, quicker than a streak of lightning. The crown prince was left behind on his own. Watching Feng Sun leave, Jun Linyuan stood there with an indecipherable look in his eyes. He then bit his lower lip, displeased. Since when was Feng Sun this impatient? Would it kill the guy to try harder to persuade his boss Jun? Gritting his teeth, the crown prince sulked. Yen Yen ran out of her tent at that moment and was exasperated to see Feng Sun dashing off. What's my cousin doing in the middle of the night? Are we going to have to run around with him? Feng Lu was sleeping in the tent with a high fever. Feng Yiran was with her, dampening her forehead with cold towels. His stomach lurched when he heard Yen Yan's words. Seriously? They had to go out in the middle of the night? And in such weather? When no one was looking, the stars had stopped twinkling in the sky. The silver moon was completely covered by thick clouds. The wind was gusty and it felt like little blades on their cheek. A storm was coming. The proud crown prince's gaze was locked on that corner in the northeast. His eyes flickered and no one could tell what was going on in his mind. Xian Yi had come to stand by Jun Linyuan's side. He said to Yen Yen in an indifferent tone, Xiao Feng will be fine on his own. Plus, a storm is coming. As a neat freak, Jun Linyuan hated getting his shoes wet. The guy would never travel in such weather. Yen Yen let out a breath of relief. So did Feng Lu and Feng Yiran, who had taken Feng Wu's tent. However, Jun Linyuan clenched his right fist at Xian Yi's words. Feeling relieved, Yen Yen still couldn't let the topic drop. She snorted. I have no idea what my cousin is thinking. Is he playing at saving a damsel in distress? Has he even considered the possibility that Feng Wu will take advantage of the situation and force him to marry her? Jun Linyuan went a little stiff. He darted a grim look at Yen Yen. Yen Yen shuddered. But this was such a rare opportunity, and she had to make every effort to throw mud at Feng Wu, in spite of her chattering teeth. Well, it's possible. Feng Wu is so. Before Yen Yen could say another word of complaint, Jun Linyuan said, We're setting out. What? Everyone was dumbfounded. Setting out? In the middle of a storm? Chapter 281 Wait for me. Chapter 281 Wait for me. However, the crown prince was already on horseback after that brief command. The next moment, he had dashed off. Xian Yi was quick to react. He hopped nimbly onto his own palm-red horse to follow Jun Linyuan and urged the horse forward with a hiya. In an instant, both Jun Linyuan and Xian Yi were out of sight as the others watched both guys disappear into the rain. Yen Yen was stunned. Was it something she said? Why did the crown prince leave all of a sudden? All she said was that she didn't want Feng Wu to pester her cousin. Was that what the crown prince was worried about as well? Did he leave in a hurry to help her cousin? Yen Yen had smuggled herself here just to get closer to Jun Linyuan and take advantage of the opportunity. She was more than happy to spice things up a little. However, there was no point staying here when Jun Linyuan wasn't around. Yen Yen jumped onto a horse and dashed off as well. Cousin, Your Royal Highness, wait for me. Both Feng Yiran and Feng Lu were baffled in the tent. They exchanged looks of bewilderment. What should they do now? They might never be able to get this close to Jun Linyuan again. It had taken them some painstaking effort to remain in Jun Linyuan's vicinity, and it would be such a shame to let this opportunity go to waste. Lu, do you think you can make it? Feng Yiran asked. Yes, brother. We have to set out now. Feng Wu's whipping had given Feng Lu cuts and bruises all over her body. The wounds were infected and she had a high fever, which made her delirious. However, she had still been able to put together a plan. If she couldn't get the Crown Prince's attention under normal circumstances, she would try to arouse his pity with her fragile health. Meanwhile, in Feng Wu's camp, a forest riddled with magical beasts wouldn't be very quiet at night. During her shift, Feng Wu spotted a pack of flame cheetahs. As the name suggested, this type of cheetah was born with a fire attribute and its sole ability was to spit fire. Plus, they often did it as a group. Feng Wu had some repellent with her. Rising to her feet, she drew a safe circle around their tent with it. After that, she walked out of the circle and stared coldly at the cheetahs. There were 100 of them in total. Their eyes were fluorescent green in the dark, and as they looked back at Feng Wu, they opened their mouths, baring their sharp fangs. Feng Wu smiled a little. The timing was perfect. Feng Wu had been advancing so fast in her cultivation level that she didn't have any time to practice her combat skills accordingly. As a result, although she was a level 8 spiritual master already, her foundation was shaky and she didn't have the corresponding physical strength. Hence, she was in dire need of an arduous battle to temper her body. Feng Wu had been keeping the fact she had resumed her cultivation from most people, making it very difficult for her to fight the opponents she needed. Luckily, they were in a forest of magical beasts now, and luckily, these 100 flame cheetahs had just landed on her doorstep. Well, I guess I'll practice my flaming sword with you. Feng Wu raised flaming sword in her right hand and pointed it at the cheetahs. Last time, Feng Wu was able to make it to the 10th stance of her swordplay, piercing stars. Today, Feng Wu decided to finish all 12 stances. 11th stance, stars rising out of the sea. Plop, plop. Leaping into the air, Feng Wu kicked off of a tree trunk with her toes. Then, she used the momentum to swoop down like a great hawk spreading its wings. Chapter 282 Stars in Heaven. Chapter 282 Stars in Heaven. Flames burst out from the tip of her flaming sword, and the flames leapt toward the sky. Under the moonlight, the sword looked resplendent. Sparks flew in all directions and all the flame cheetahs spat fire at Feng Wu. Instantly, flames sprang up, as if half of the sky was burning. That was what had caught Feng Sun's attention earlier. Feng Wu smiled. Bring it on! As the cheetahs stood on their hind legs to leap at Feng Wu had already crouched down. Standing up, the cheetah's great stature put them at twice Feng Wu's height. Hence, when Feng Wu bent forward and flitted past them, they couldn't even touch her sleeves. Resourceful as always, Feng Wu stabbed at the cheetah's legs and abdomens as she made her way through the pack. Infuriated, the cheetahs went after Feng Wu. However, although they were great in number, they were too big to move as nimbly. Keeping her head down at the level of their legs, Feng Wu would stab them before switching spots right away. The cheetahs would never catch her like this. The flame cheetahs attacked the whole time, but all the flames they spat out only hit other cheetahs in the pack, which nearly caused a cannibalistic fight. Roar! Pissed, they kept chasing after Feng Wu. But Feng Wu was too light-footed for them to catch. She was swift, crafty, and unpredictable. After running around for a while, 50 cheetahs fell to the ground, bleeding from their injuries. The other 50 cheetahs glared at Feng Wu with bloodshot eyes, and they charged at her all at once. Roar! About time! Feng Wu was excited, for she had already mastered that 11th stance during the past few minutes or so. Stars rising out of the sea was complete, and she only had one stance left to master. Stars in Heaven. Stars in Heaven! Flaming sword flew out of Feng Wu's hand and spun quickly in midair. Cheetahs in the blade's path dropped dead like harvested wheat. Blood splashed everywhere. Before they knew it, this place had turned into a living hell for them. Stars in Heaven was a fierce stance that was perfect for destroying magical beasts in large numbers. In that brief moment, the spinning sword took the lives of 10 flame cheetahs. The cheetahs kept spitting fire, but stars in heaven didn't fear any flames. The last 40 flame cheetahs already looked shaken, but they stood their ground and decided to fight to the end. Feng Wu smiled. Great. She could get more practice. Stars in heaven, go. Flaming sword flew out of Feng Wu's hand once more. Whoosh. It spun in midair. Pop, pop. The sword spun over the cheetahs' heads again, and killed another 10 like a reaper. The remaining 30 cheetahs were covered in bloody cuts as well. Stars in heaven, go. Feng Wu used that lethal stance again. Roar! The last 30 cheetahs were utterly shaken and they looked terrified. They forgot all about their dead companions and turned to flee. However, Flaming Sword wouldn't let that happen. As if it had a will of its own, the sword chased after the cheetahs and went on spinning, until it killed all 100 flame cheetahs. After that, it flew back to Feng Wu with a crisp and proud clang. Feng Wu examined Flaming Sword and was pleasantly surprised. Chapter 283, She Won't Talk to Me. Chapter 283, She Won't Talk to Me. This sword was divine. Together with the sword stances, it was like giving a tiger wings. Thanks to Flaming Sword and the stances, Feng Wu finally had some combat skills she could count on, which would make her life back in the imperial capital a little safer. Feng Wu was going to take care of the dead bodies when the sword flew out again and circled in the air over the dead cheetahs. The sword went over every single one of them, and by the time it came back to Feng Wu, the dead bodies had all turned to ash, which was then blown away by the wind, without leaving a trace. Feng Wu was speechless. Only then did she realize that Flaming Sword had absorbed all the fire energy in the cheetahs, and without which the bodies disintegrated. That was incredible. Feng Wu's mouth fell open as she stared at the scarlet-red sword in astonishment. Her beautiful master had given the sword to Feng Wu, and she had no idea where it came from. She never gave it much thought before, but now she had a feeling. This flaming sword was much more than it appeared. If only her beautiful master could wake up now. She had so many questions to ask. Feng Wu's mind wandered at the thought of her beautiful master, and she recalled the terms of her agreement with Little Phoenix. When she reached the spiritual grandmaster stage, Little Phoenix would tell her how to wake up her master. Feng Wu had thought that it would be ages before she became a spiritual grandmaster, but after her quick advancement in the last few days, she was much more hopeful. Would she get there before she knew it? After quickly cleaning herself in the river, she changed into some clean clothes and headed back toward the campsite. She then began to cultivate and lost track of time. Feng Sun's voice rang out. Little Feng Wu. Little Feng Wu. Are you all right? Where are you? He ran as fast as a streak of lightning and shouted at the top of his lungs. Seeing the light at the campsite, he sped up. Feng Wu opened her eyes. A storm had risen when she wasn't looking. Rain poured down from the thick clouds above, splashing muddy water everywhere. The rain also washed away what was left of the cheetah's ashes. Good. Feng Wu inwardly nodded in satisfaction. Through the curtain of rain, she saw a teenager dashing toward her like a shooting arrow. Feng Sun couldn't tell if it was sweat or rainwater that covered his face. He then saw Feng Wu standing gracefully in a shelter built from branches, with a peaceful look on her face. His heart skipped a beat and he rushed to her side, wanting to pull her into his arms. However, before he could do so, a slender yet strong hand grabbed him by his right shoulder and threw him in the other direction. Feng Wu looked up and met Jun Linyuan's piercing black eyes. She ignored the crown prince, who looked like a pissed-off lion. Rushing into the rain, she helped Feng Sun up with both hands and asked attentively, Feng Sun, are you all right? Are you hurt anywhere? To Feng Wu, Feng Sun might not be the most reliable guy in the world, but he did genuinely care about her. Hence, seeing him being tossed aside, Her first reaction was to help him before she turned around to glare at Jun Linyuan, the culprit. Seeing Feng Wu's soft, fair hands on Feng Sun's arms, anger flickered in Jun Linyuan's eyes. However, Feng Sun had no idea of the fuse he had lit. He went on asking Feng Wu, "I saw a big fire in this direction just then and I thought something happened to you. Are you alright? Did anything happen?" Feng Wu would be lying if she said that she wasn't touched by Feng Sun's genuine concern. She smiled at him. "I'm standing here in one piece, aren't I?" Chapter 284 Sparks and Lightning. Chapter 284 Sparks and Lightning. Looking at Feng Wu from head to toe, Feng Sun nodded. "You seem unscathed. But you really didn't see a big fire?" Since the rain had washed everything away, Feng Wu was able to give him an innocent and bewildered look. "What fire? Nothing? Well, all the better." Feng Sun was relieved. He had been really worried. Feng Wu smiled at Feng Sun. "Were you running so fast because you saw the fire and thought that we were in danger here?" Feng Sun raised the chin. "What do you think?" Feng Wu grinned. Her smile reminded one of a dazzling summer day, and it brightened up her already stunning face. Her beauty was irresistible. Jun Linyuan stood right beside them. Grabbing Feng Wu's fair hand, he stared at her. His face was livid. And he was giving off the most imperious and intimidating air. It was the prestige characteristic of someone who held a superior position. Feng Wu stared back at Jun Linyuan and she saw the anger in his eyes, but there was something else there that she couldn't put her finger on. He just kept his gaze on her as if he was going to bore a hole into her face. But he gritted his teeth and wouldn't utter a word. Feng Wu frowned. What was going on? "I gave up my tent willingly and left in advance. Has that somehow displeased your Royal Highness?" Jun Linyuan's eyes spat flames of anger. What had displeased him? Her giving up the tent and leaving early. What did she think? However, as the proudest teenager on the continent, Jun Linyuan could never bring himself to admit it. Hence, all he could do was glare at her in the most aggressive manner. Feng Wu couldn't stand it anymore. After humiliating and provoking her, he had moved on to interrogating her now. Even Jun Linyuan couldn't bully someone like this. Feng Wu threw off Jun Linyuan's hand angrily. "This is highly inappropriate. Your Royal Highness, you're way out of line." Jun Linyuan had used those words on Feng Wu before, and she threw them right back at him. The color of Jun Linyuan's face changed, and in the dark, his eyes looked even more piercing. Poor Feng Sun. The quarreling pair was giving him a headache again. What was wrong with these two? Why did they have to fight whenever they met? Hence, Feng Sun rushed to their sides and tried to mitigate. "Gosh, what's wrong with the two of you? Why are you fighting all the time? Can't we just talk like normal people?" "You two! Shut up!" Feng Wu and Jun Linyuan shouted in unison. It was meant for Feng Sun, but they were still glaring at each other as they spoke. The air between them seemed to be charged with electricity, and one could almost see the sparks and streaks of lightning crackling between them. Feng Sun realized that Feng Wu reminded him a lot of Jun Linyuan when she was angry. The air she gave off was equally intimidating. Just then, the others arrived as well. Yan Yan was right behind Xian Yi. Seeing how close Feng Wu and Jun Linyuan were standing to each other, Yan Yan was overwhelmed by jealousy. She yelled at Feng Wu, "You can forget your arrogance. His Royal Highness isn't here for you. Stop flattering yourself and wake up." Feng Wu frowned at Yan Yan. Why was everyone she disliked here? What was the point of leaving in advance? Yan Yan ran up to Feng Wu and smirked. "His Royal Highness is here for my cousin." Cousin Feng dashed off because he was worried about you, and His Royal Highness only came here because he didn't want you to pester my cousin. Feng Wu, you're not worth any attention. Chapter 285, So Pissed. Chapter 285, So Pissed. Straight-faced, Jun Linyuan cast a stern glance at Yan Yan, looking very displeased. He didn't want her to pester Feng Sun? Hearing Yan Yan's words, Feng Wu felt blood rush into her cheeks. Staring coldly at Jun Linyuan, she pointed at Yan Yan and stressed each word through gritted teeth. Jun Linyuan, is she telling the truth? Jun Linyuan pursed his lips tightly. He stared at Feng Wu with a grim look on his face without uttering a word. Feng Wu had never felt this humiliated. Everyone mistakenly assumed she was in love with Jun Linyuan, and now, they were slandering her about pestering Feng Sun. How highly did these people think of themselves? It was an insult to the extreme. Fury filled Feng Wu's chest, so intense that she felt like she was on fire. Pointing at Jun Linyuan with a shaking finger, she said, "You, take your minions and get lost. Right now. Go away." Little Feng Wu. Feng Sun went up to her and tried to explain. However, he was intimidated by Feng Wu's bloodshot eyes. Taking a deep breath, Feng Wu pointed to the front. "Feng Sun, I don't want to get angry with you. Please just go." Yan Yan glowered at Feng Wu. "Mind your language. My cousin is a young lord, and even the head of your Feng clan doesn't dare speak to him like that, let alone use those words with his royal highness." "Feng Wu, who the hell do you think you are?" However, before Yan Yan could go on, smack! Feng Wu raised her right hand and slapped Yan Yan in her face. "That's for talking too much." Poor Yan Yan. She flew back at the strike and smashed into an ancient tree a short distance away, breaking a few branches. Xiao Wu, the beautiful lady, was woken up by the noise and she stepped out of the tent to see Feng Wu hitting Yan Yan, which frightened the lady. Holding Feng Wu's arm with her soft hands, she said, "Xiao Wu." Feng Wu only calmed down at her mother's consoling touch. Jun Linyuan glared at Feng Wu. He had come all the way here to help her out of kindness. Not only didn't she thank him, she told him to go away. Superior and proud as Jun Linyuan was, he had never been wronged like this before. He clenched his fists and blue veins popped out. Glaring at Feng Wu, Jun Linyuan looked like he was going to swallow her whole. His intimidating aura swept across the entire campsite and the temperature seemed to drop below freezing. "It's so cold," Feng Sun shuddered. Turning to the other side, he looked right into Jun Linyuan's murderous eyes and his stomach lurched. "Boss Jun, you!" Jun Linyuan gave Feng Wu one last angry look before turning to leave. He soon realized that Feng Sun wasn't following him and he glared at the latter. "Get your ass over here!" Jun Linyuan seemed to be in such a foul mood that everyone quivered inwardly and didn't dare make a sound. Growing up with Jun Linyuan, Feng Sun knew that the guy was genuinely pissed. He knew better than to defy the crown prince in such a situation. Hence, he scurried off after Jun Linyuan, while enjoining Feng Wu over his shoulder, "You guys should get going as soon as the rain stops. If the Gale ferry service up ahead gets shut down by the flood, you'll be stuck here for a month." Even at a moment like this, Feng Sun still cared about Feng Wu. Poor Feng Lu. The bumpy ride on the back of a horse almost made her pass out. After finally arriving at the campsite, she was told that Jun Linyuan had just left. Looking at Feng Lu's ghastly pale face, Feng Yiran frowned. "Can you keep up?" Chapter 286, Zhua Qingluan has leveled up. Chapter 286, Zhua Qingluan has leveled up. Debilitated, Feng Lu was too weak to even breathe properly, but she gritted her teeth and said nonetheless, we must keep going." She darted a gloating look at Feng Wu as she said so. The Crown Prince really didn't like Feng Wu at all, otherwise he would never leave her here deep inside a forest. Up ahead, Jun Linyuan took the lead and rode very fast. Cold rainwater slapped against his face and body, and it was bone-chillingly cold. However, when he recalled Feng Wu's smile for Feng Sun and the fact that she had ignored him completely without so much as darting a look in his direction, even the cold rain couldn't extinguish the flames of fury in Jun Linyuan's chest. Poor Feng Sun. He had no idea that he was the source of Jun Linyuan's tantrum, and right now, he was nagging Xian Yi for an explanation. Boss Jun is so mad. Did someone piss him off? Rubbing his nose, Xian Yi gave Feng Sun a meaningful look. Feng Sun didn't take the hint and looked back at Xian Yi in confusion. Yan Yan caught up with them at that moment and she tugged at Feng Sun's sleeve. Cousin, it was all your fault. What did I do? Feng Sun asked in frustration. Yan Yan said, You know perfectly well how repulsive His Royal Highness finds Feng Wu, but you still decided to befriend her. Of course His Royal Highness is pissed. Whose side are you on, exactly? Really? Feng Sun tilted his head. Was Boss Jun that unforgiving? But little Feng Wu and her family are really weak. It's by sheer luck that nothing has happened to them so far. Who knows when they will run into magical beasts? If they do. By now, they were almost 50 kilometers away from Feng Wu's campsite, and he wouldn't be able to keep an eye on her if they went any further. Jun Linyuan nimbly dismounted. Feng Sun ran up to him right away and said ingratiatingly, Boss Jun, the rain is too heavy for us to keep going. How about we build a treehouse here and take shelter in it? He had expected to be turned down, but the Crown Prince only glanced at him and nodded. I'll go chop up some wood and start working on the treehouse. Ha ha. Little Feng Wu and her family can stay overnight in it when they get here tomorrow. After that, Feng Sun was about to get on with the task. However, Jun Linyuan frowned a little and stopped Feng Sun. You've been stuck at the top level of the spiritual grandmaster stage for quite some time. Feng Sun's heart sank. Xian Yi has had a breakthrough, said Jun Linyuan casually. Ah, that successfully set Feng Sun off. He ran up to Xian Yi and grabbed him by his collar. When did this happen? When? Jun Linyuan's gaze was as sharp as a cold blade. From this moment on, you're going to forget about everything else and put all your effort into your cultivation. But Boss Jun, Feng Sun protested. Zhuo Qingluan broke through as well. Jun Linyuan made another casual comment. Feng Sun couldn't think about anything else now except for Zhuo Qingluan's advancement to the spiritual elder stage. He said in frustration, Seriously? Zhuo Qingluan? She made it? Jun Linyuan snickered. She doesn't waste her talent the way you do. Whatever. I'm going to cultivate now. Nothing can stop me from cultivating. Feng Sun sat down with his legs crossed and switched to his cultivation mode right away. Zhuo Qingluan's breakthrough had motivated him greatly. However, before he entered the state of meditation, Feng Sun reminded Jun Linyuan, Boss Jun, could you maybe keep the news of Zhuo Qingluan's breakthrough from little Feng Wu? She'll be so upset if she hears about it. That pretty yet stubborn face appeared in Jun Linyuan's head. Chapter 287, What's Boss Jun's Problem? Chapter 287, What's Boss Jun's Problem? Jun Linyuan looked bewildered and he snorted. Why do you care? Feng Sun clenched his fist. I have to. Zhuo Qingluan is sure to give little Feng Wu a hard time, and I must get better. That way, I'll be able to protect little Feng Wu. After that, Feng Sun started his cultivation right away, leaving the Crown Prince standing there looking stunned. Protect Feng Wu? Jun Linyuan looked pensively at Feng Sun. If that girl just gave in and begged for his help, no one would ever be able to give her a hard time at all. Xian Yi wasn't doing a very good job with the treehouse, for Feng had always taken care of tasks like this. Jun Linyuan's face darkened a little when he saw the completed treehouse. Xian Yi's heart sank. As expected, Jun Linyuan frowned a little and said, Too small. Too small? How could that be? He had used the exact measurements as Feng had. Jun Linyuan was the only one using it, so how big did he need it to be? Exactly how much bigger? Xian Yi wavered. He had never missed Feng as much as he did now. However, Feng had escorted Feng Xiaoqi back to the imperial capital, and they had no idea when he would be back. Just as Xian Yi was thinking about Feng, Feng came back. Xian Yi couldn't be any more pleased, and he immediately handed the task to Feng. With Feng taking over, the new treehouse was solid, clean, neat, and looked very refreshing with all the green leaves. However, Jun Linyuan took a glance and went on frowning. It was obvious that he was still displeased. Xian Yi and Feng exchanged looks of bewilderment. Still too small? So bigger? Xian Yi asked. Crossing his hands behind his back, Jun Linyuan gave off a self-important and unhurried air. However, one could tell with one look that he wasn't satisfied with the result. Build another one. What? Xian Yi was bemused. Boss Jun had never bothered to have a second treehouse built for the rest of them. What was going on here? Even Feng couldn't help but give Jun Linyuan another look. Something was definitely amiss here. Jun Linyuan walked away and disappeared into the forest. Xian Yi was bewildered. Where is Boss Jun going? Before long, they heard the noise of magical beasts scattering. Feng replied in his usual indifferent tone, expelling magical beasts, apparently. Xian Yi was even more confused. Why bother chasing them at all? Boss Jun and you yourself are more than enough to keep all of us safe. Plus, since when does Boss Jun himself need to do such petty tasks? He could have told us to do it. That was exactly what Feng was thinking as well. Hence, he also looked at the Crown Prince in bewilderment. Is it because we're not careful enough for him? Rubbing his chin, Xian Yi considered the possibility. Has anything happened in the past few days? Even Feng, the least gossipy person of them all, couldn't help but ask. Well, if you put it that way, there was something. Boss Jun and little Feng Wu had a row. Really? Tell me about it. The taciturn Feng was actively seeking gossip, which proved how disturbed he was by the Crown Prince's behavior. Xian Yi told Feng everything, then looked at the latter expectantly. Feng looked at that figure clad in black a short distance away. The teenager was born with the duty to rule over this continent. Was he going to be distracted now? Feng decided that he would wait and see. The night passed without incident. The first ray of sunshine lit up the entire treehouse through the window curtained by green leaf. Feng soon opened his eyes, which flickered brightly in the sunlight. Just then. Author, Boss Jun, why build two treehouses? Jun Linyuan, shut up. Author, Boss Jun, why did you chase away the magical beasts yourself? Jun Linyuan, shut up. Author, was it because you thought the others wouldn't be as careful about it as you? Jun Linyuan, shut up. Chapter 288 Wait, where did the magical beasts go? Chapter 288 Wait, where did the magical beasts go? Seeing Feng, Feng soon beamed at the steward. Hey, you're back! The teenager's cheerful smile seemed to brighten up everything right away. Feng liked Feng Sun for his cheerfulness, and he nodded at the latter. Young Master Feng, come and have some breakfast. We'll be on our way soon. However, Feng Sun dilly-dallied after breakfast and didn't want to leave. What are you waiting for? Xian Yi asked. Feng Sun kept looking in the direction Feng Wu would come from, and he looked bewildered. Why isn't little Feng Wu here yet? Did something happen to them? Did some magical beasts eat them? Xian Yi smacked his own forehead. Dude, we're blazing the trail for them here, and we've driven all the magical beasts away. There are no magical beasts left to eat them. You're right. Feng Sun's face lit up and he rubbed his hands together. By leading the way, not only can we leave treehouses behind for them to sleep in, we can also chase away all the dangerous beasts for them. Ha ha, I'm such a genius. That's exactly what we're gonna do. Xian Yi nudged Feng Sun with his elbow, reminding the latter that Boss Jun was watching. Feng Sun rubbed his nose. Since Boss Jun disliked Feng Wu so much, the guy probably didn't like to hear him talk about her this way. As expected, Feng soon noticed that Jun Linyuan's handsome face had darkened a little. Sigh. Feng Sun moaned inwardly. Feng Wu was such a great girl, but why were those two so hostile toward one another? It really bothered him. Shall we set out now? Feng asked Jun Linyuan after getting the horses ready. The teenager who was going to rule the continent one day looked exceptionally pensive at the moment. He then darted an unhurried look at Feng Sun. Feng Sun was befuddled, but he smacked himself on the forehead immediately. Since Boss Jun didn't like Feng Wu, if he continued holding the team up to wait for Feng Wu, Boss Jun would be even more pissed. At that thought, Feng Sun let out a melancholy sigh. Well, let's go. Jun Linyuan's gaze fell on Feng Sun's face like a sharp blade. Feng Sun was confused. He had done everything that Boss Jun wanted, but the guy was still unhappy. What was he supposed to do? Your Royal Highness, shall we leave now? There was a meaningful look on Feng's usually impassive face. The future ruler of the empire clenched his fist, and the look in his eyes was indecipherable. He said nothing before he hopped onto his horse and dashed off. Feng Sun rubbed his chin. Am I imagining it, or is Boss Jun angry? Looking at the proud Jun Linyuan riding off and the confused look on Feng Sun's face in turn, Xian Yi shook his head with a wry smile. It seemed that he had guessed right. I never thought, Xian Yi was amazed. You know what's going on? Feng Sun stared at Xian Yi with sparkling eyes. Xian Yi shrugged in a noncommittal manner. Tell me. Feng Sun was intrigued. It can't be explained. Little Xian, are you trying to get your ass kicked? I think you'll really become an idiot if I beat you one more time. You! The poor sunshine boy wasn't the sharpest tool in the box and was forever being laughed at by Xian Yi. Feng Wu and her family arrived sometime in the evening, and the beautiful lady was elated to see the clean and neat treehouses. What pleased her even more was Chapter 289, She Needs Combat. Chapter 289, She Needs Combat. As they traveled on, someone seemed to have cleared the trail for them, leaving behind nice treehouses and game ready to eat. However, Feng Wu wasn't happy at all. She needed her practice. She needed real combat. They were about to reach the imperial capital, and she needed all the opportunities she could get to improve. Those people would eat her alive if she wasn't tough enough. Hence, while Feng Wu was ready to fight to death with all the magical beasts in the forest, she realized in disappointment that there were no magical beasts. Feng Wu was shocked. How could this be? They were in an extended stretch of frozen forest, and magical beasts were supposed to run rampant in this part of the wood. Their journey was supposed to be plagued by crises. But what really happened was, nothing actually happened. Not even once. If she couldn't run into any magical beasts around the treehouse, she would try somewhere deeper in the woods. Feng Wu made up her mind. After instructing Uncle Chiu to protect her mother, she rushed into the woods to search for magical beasts. However, she didn't even find a rabbit, let alone ferocious magical beasts. The woods were void of any sound apart from the noise she made herself. It was unnaturally quiet. How could this happen? Feng Wu couldn't for the life of her figure it out. Where did all the magical beasts go? Where was she supposed to get her practice? Feng Wu was almost in tears. She would never expect that someone had chased away all the magical beasts beforehand. If she knew, she really would burst into tears. Feng Wu's original plan was to reach the spiritual Grandmaster stage before the end of their journey. However, without magical beasts, even with the help of the cub's spiritual energy, Feng Wu was only able to make it to level 9 of the spiritual master stage. She was so close to becoming a spiritual Grandmaster, but the breakthrough didn't happen, and Feng Wu had no idea when it would happen. Before they knew it, they were almost there. Sigh, seeing the walls of the imperial capital on their approach, Feng Wu signed in resignation. The Junwu Empire, the imperial capital. The city was the heart of the empire. The entire imperial capital reminded one of a vast, boundless building that stood on the horizon like a gigantic beast from ancient times. It was grand, spectacular, and awe-inspiring. The city gate was over 300 meters in height, and standing in the gateway, one looked as insignificant as an ant. Feng Wu was no stranger to the imperial capital. After all, she had lived here for the first 8 years of her life. It had been 5 years since she last entered the city, and Feng Wu was overwhelmed by mixed feelings. However, she had yet to get over her emotional moment when a man and a woman showed up from inside. "Feng Wu, I see you were close behind us," she heard Feng Lu's voice from up ahead. Looking up, Feng Wu saw Feng Yuan and Feng Lu standing there, as well as Feng Lu's undisguised delight at Feng Wu's discomfiture. Seeing how cheerful and refreshed these two were, Feng Wu knew that they had been back to the Feng Manor already. The imperial capital was the territory of those people, so it was no wonder they made no secret of their arrogance. Walking up to Feng Wu, Feng Lu stared at the latter coldly. "Feng Wu, you're finally back in the imperial capital after 5 years." Feng Wu gave her an indifferent glance. "It's not too late to run away." Leaning toward Feng Wu, Feng Lu whispered in her ear. Feng Wu frowned a little, but her face remained impassive and undisturbed. Chapter 290. How can she do such a thing? Chapter 290. How can she do such a thing? "Well, if you're going to stay, then get ready for my revenge. Feng Wu, you've just walked into your living hell." Feng Wu only darted a look at Feng Lu, then went back into her own carriage. She didn't act out? Feng Lu was disappointed. Her plan was to make a scene right outside the city gate, so that the entire imperial capital would hear about the return of Feng Wu the good-for-nothing. That way, Feng Wu would be ridiculed by everyone. Feng Yuan went up to Feng Lu. "Xiao Lu, let's go back." The beautiful lady was scared. She took Feng Wu's hand and looked nervously at the latter. "I'm right here and nothing is going to happen to you." Feng Wu caressed her mother's fine, slim hands and her face looked a little grim in the sunlight. Their carriage moved on, carrying them toward the manor of the Feng clan. They could hear all the people talking on the street. "Feng Wu is back." "Which Feng Wu? Which one do you think?" "The genius Feng Wu that used to be as famous as Jun Linyuan." "Right, that good-for-nothing who lost her true phoenix blood. I thought she was long dead." "She isn't, but they banished her to the border. I didn't think she would come back after 5 years. The cripple has some balls to come back now. Doesn't she realize that she will get nothing but ridicule and taunts here?" Sitting in the carriage with her legs crossed and her eyes closed, Feng Wu was absorbed in her cultivation. This was a world which valued martial prowess above anything else. Ever since losing her status as the little genius, she was surrounded by nothing but sneers and taunts. It had been Zhuo Qingluan's doing all along, destroying Feng Wu's true phoenix blood, but the victim became the one who got the blame. "Nice job, Zhuo family. Do you remember? There was a girl back then that was equally as famous as Feng Wu." "Of course we do. That's Zhuo Qingyun, the eldest daughter of the Zhuo family." "She's not Zhuo Qingyun anymore. She goes by the name Zhuo Qingluan now. Qingluan, as in the big blue bird, the real phoenix." "Do you know what Zhuo Qingluan's cultivation stage is now, then?" "What stage?" "She's a spiritual elder already." "Holy shit! A spiritual elder? Seriously? She's not 15 yet and she's already a spiritual elder? Imagine what she will be like in the days to come." Poor Feng Wu. She's still useless in cultivation and the gap between her and Zhuo Qingyun will only grow wider. One day, she will be so far behind that she won't be able to follow Zhuo Qingyun with her eyes. Up on the second floor of a restaurant by the street, a teenage boy and 2 teenage girls stood by the window. The teenager was looking casually out the window, but the 2 girls both had sneers on their faces. "I would rather die out there than come back to the imperial capital if I were Feng Wu." The last thing I would want is to come back. Zhua Qingyu, the girl in a pink dress, gloated at Feng Wu's discomfiture. She's not going to die that easily. She still has to throw herself at the crown prince. You have no idea how shamefully cloying she was during the entire trip. Gosh, I'm blushing just to talk about it, Yan Yan said diffidently. Throw herself at the crown prince? Yan Yan's words shocked not only Zhua Qingyu, but the girls at the nearby tables as well. You have no idea. That Feng Wu is really… Not only wouldn't she leave His Royal Highness alone, she even tried to climb into bed with him in the middle of the night. My cousin saw it with his own eyes. You know who my cousin is, right? You mean young Lord Feng? That's him. He's the Crown Prince's childhood friend, and he wouldn't lie about something like this. Yan Yan smirked. Oh my God! Zhua Qingyu put a hand over her mouth and looked shocked. How can Feng Wu, how can she do such a thing? She really has no shame at all. Chapter 291, The Feng Clan. Chapter 291, The Feng Clan. Of course we can't imagine it. She grew up practicing it. What then? What happened after that? Zhua Qingyu asked eagerly. Well, Yan Yan gave them a mysterious smile and paused for effect. By now, everyone in the restaurant was astonished by what Yan Yan had revealed. Many young ladies were jealous of Feng Wu for her previous engagement to Jun Linyuan and would throw mud at her whenever they had a chance. Guys, on the other hand, had a pretty good impression of Feng Wu and often pitied her for what she went through. But if what Yan Yan said was true, Feng Wu was a cripple as well as an idiot for losing her head over love. There was nothing good they could say about her anymore. Holding Yan Yan's arm, Zhua Qingyu pressed, Tell us what happened after that. Did His Royal Highness throw her out? That had to be what happened, right? Yan Yan said ambiguously, Do you think with His Royal Highness's temperament, he would cut her loose that easily? Wow, the restaurant erupted in astonishment. The longer Yan Yan held back, the more curious they became. Everyone loved good gossip, and more girls than one could count were in love with Jun Linyuan. This piece of information was so arresting that it spread like wildfire. It started in the restaurant, but before long, it took wings and flew to all corners of the imperial capital. Have you heard? Feng Wu is so in love with the crown prince that she shamelessly tried to climb into bed with His Royal Highness. Really? Of course. Young Lord Feng saw it with his own eyes. It can't be any more true. This Feng Wu. She's disgusting. Why hasn't she died already? The rumor spread at a speed faster than one could imagine. It reached the Feng clan house before Feng Wu did. The Feng clan. The current head of the clan was the old Mrs. Feng, Feng Wu's grandmother. After the old Master Feng, Feng Wu's grandfather, walked out on the clan, old Mrs. Feng took over the position as head of the clan. She was distant, serious, magisterial, and not someone one could get along with easily. Old Mrs. Feng had 3 sons. Feng Yanfeng, the eldest son, had 2 sons and 2 daughters, and the old lady's second son was Feng Wu's father. Feng Wu's irresponsible dad disappeared before Feng Xiaoqi was born and hadn't been heard from ever since. Feng Yanfeng, Feng Wu's eldest uncle, had 2 sons, Feng Yiran and Feng Ir, and 2 daughters, Feng Yi and Feng Lu. Feng Wu and Feng Xiaoqi were the 5th girl and 7th boy respectively in their clan generation. The other unmentioned children were all Feng Wu's 3rd uncle's offspring. However, this uncle lived with his entire family in another city where he worked, so there weren't that many people living in the Feng manor in the imperial capital at the moment. In the main hall. Mother, that's what we've heard so far, Lady Wang, Feng Yanfeng's wife, was standing next to the old lady and informing the latter about all the rumors on the street. The old lady had thick eyebrows that were pointed at the end, which looked like a pair of sharp blades when she frowned, making those around her shudder. She was a tough lady who was even harder on herself than on others. As the string of beads turned in her hand, the old lady's eyes flickered grimly. She's not even here yet and we're already getting such rumors. What will happen when she arrives? Was this what she had in mind? To bring shame on all her sisters? There was no warmth in the old lady's voice. Despite having been around the old lady for so many years, Lady Wang still got the jitters when the old lady straightened her face. She's not here yet. Maybe it's all just a misunderstanding, Lady Wang said in a seemingly kind voice. However, the old lady only snickered. Misunderstanding? If that's the case, it only proves how stupid she is. Unlike everyone else, she's getting more foolish as she grows. Just then. Chapter 292, Keeping Her Family Safe. Chapter 292, Keeping Her Family Safe. Lady Wang gloated. However, she had her head lowered, which prevented anyone else from seeing the mocking smile on her face. After wiping the sneer off her face, Lady Wang said mildly, "Mother, I think Xiao Wu knows how to handle something like this. She's a well-behaved and decent girl." However, the old lady cut her off with a snort. Well-behaved? No such rumor would spread if she really were well-behaved. Maybe someone made it up out of jealousy. Heh, the old lady smirked. Jealous of her? What for? What does she have now that's worth that kind of attention? Before Lady Wang could say another word, the old lady waved at her. You can stop trying to make excuses for her. Lady Wang seemed reluctant to do as she was told, but she nodded in the end. However, a smile flickered in her lowered eyes. Feng Wu, the old lady is prejudiced by her first impressions already. I'd like to see you talk your way out of this. Just then, Feng Wu's carriage arrived outside the Feng Manor. As one of the 9 major families of the imperial capital, the Feng clan was able to maintain its appearance, despite its declining status in recent years. The lofty walls and awe-inspiring brown gate reminded one of a colossus. A carved stone golden flaming phoenix from ancient times was set on top of the wall with the head of the phoenix right above the gate. The bird's eyes were narrowed slightly, and no matter where one stood, they could feel those eyes on them. Many who passed through this gate felt their blood curdle under the gaze of those eyes. The gate was tightly shut and there was no sign that it was going to open. The plain carriage entered through the side gate and carried on along a narrow path paved with bluestone. The surface of the path was uneven and the ride became quite bumpy. The beautiful lady looked pleadingly at Feng Wu. She hadn't forgotten what happened 5 years ago, which still made her tremble in great trepidation. She looked as helpless as a puppy. Feng Wu took the lady's thin arm and smiled. "Mum, don't worry. I got you." That was always what she said when she comforted her mother. The lady gradually calmed down and looked less frightened. "Yes. Xiao Wu is here. I'm not afraid." Feng Wu smiled bitterly. The imperial capital was a place filled with sudden and perplexing changes, and as a mere level 9 spiritual master, she was simply too weak to keep her mother safe. Feng Wu desperately hoped that she could get stronger soon, so that she could keep her family safe. She then turned her thoughts to her younger brother. She wondered how Feng Xiaoqi was doing after Jun Linyuan took him away. Was he living comfortably? Had anyone given him a hard time? Would he be abused? While Feng Wu was lost in all the distracting thoughts, the carriage took a turn along the path and entered the second gate of the manor. It stopped abruptly after about 15 minutes. Feng Lu's arrogant voice rang out. "Feng Wu, you're home. Time to get out of the carriage." Interrupted, Feng Wu stopped her train of thought and came back to reality. She jumped out of the carriage first. She moved as swift as a spiritual swallow, and Feng Lu was sick with jealousy as she stared at Feng Wu's slim figure and her graceful movements. Despite her abhorrence, Feng Lu had to admit that even without showing her face, Feng Wu was able to attract a lot of attention with that slender body of hers alone. That was so unfair. Chapter 293 Useless. 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 Chapter 293 Useless. 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 However, Feng Lu looked at Feng Wu expectantly, too excited to even blink. She wanted to see the look on Feng Wu's face when the latter realized that her home had been taken away. Feng Lu had been looking forward to this moment since last night, which kept her turning and tossing in bed. However, Feng Wu's first reaction when she got out of the carriage wasn't to look around. Instead, she turned around to help her graceful and delicate mother down. Ah! Qiuling turned out to be the first to cry out. What's this place? Why are we here? What happened? Here we go. Feng Lu looked at Feng Wu in excitement. She didn't want to miss a thing. After helping her mother out of the carriage, and making sure that the latter was steady on her feet, Feng Wu turned around to examine the place. It was a dilapidated courtyard. The yard was overgrown with weeds and the houses were old and shabby. Even the walls were cracked. The roof tiles were broken in many places and the holes had only been filled with thatch. Feng Wu remembered this courtyard. Many years ago, this courtyard was where her grandfather's crazy younger brother lived. The courtyard had been struck by a thunderbolt once, which made the others deem it inauspicious. No one lived here after the old man went missing and the place thus became deserted. Were they going to make them live here now? Granny Zhao looked displeased. Why are we stopping here? Our flower butterfly yard is still way up ahead. Kaiwe, Feng Lu's head chambermaid, tittered. Granny Zhao, have you forgotten? Flower butterfly yard is Miss Lu's residence now. Why are you calling it yours? Both Granny Zhao's and Qiuling's eyes widened in disbelief. Granny Zhao flared up. Yours? How can it be yours? Flower Butterfly Yard belongs to the second branch of the Feng clan, and that was the old Mrs. Feng's order. You can't just take it away like this. No way. I'm going to ask the old lady myself. Qiuling couldn't hold back her anger either. Clenching her fist, she protested, That's just outrageous. You're robbing us of our house. We'll see what the old lady has to say about this. Feng Lu was elated to see how pissed Granny Zhao and Qiuling were. However, to her disappointment, Feng Wu's face remained impassive the whole time and didn't look disturbed at all. Why could she remain so calm when her home had been taken away? Displeased with Feng Wu's reaction, Feng Lu snorted. Forget about Flower Butterfly Yard. You're lucky to even have a roof over your head. Who the hell do you think you are? You're just freeloaders that are of no use to the Feng clan. Feng Wu kept her calm gaze on Feng Lu, but something cold quickly flickered in her eyes. Feng Lu darted a glance at Feng Wu in satisfaction. Why? Are you unhappy to hear that? You're a cripple and that's a fact. You should know your place by now. You've become useless and you'll stay that way forever. Useless. 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 Feng Wu clenched her fists under her long sleeves. Useless? We'll see about that. With her current ability, she could send Feng Lu in the air with one strike. The girl would spit out blood and would have to stay in bed for 3 months. However, looking at her delicate mother next to her, Feng Wu reminded herself that she wasn't alone now. She had responsibilities and she had to tolerate the unfair treatment. She had waited for 5 years. She didn't mind waiting a little longer. Feng Wu only smiled. Feng Lu, you look so unbridled. Unbridled? Ha ha ha, my dear sister, I like that word. Feng Lu spoke slowly and her expression turned into a grim sneer. Chapter 294, Outrageous. Chapter 294, Outrageous. Lowering her voice, Feng Lu whispered in Feng Wu's ear, For everything you've done to me during the journey, I'll pay you back 100 times in the days to come. Feng Wu smiled. I'm looking forward to it. Feng Lu clenched her fists. That devil-may-care tone was so frustrating. You are? Wait and see. Feng Lu stormed off. She decided that she was going to draw up a plan to periodically abuse Feng Wu. She would come up with something small every day, and every month she would set a midterm goal. Her ultimate goal was to make Feng Wu live in hell. Feng Wu's family looked at one another in bewilderment after Feng Lu left. Miss Wu, Qiuling said with a long face. This is unacceptable. How can they make us live in such conditions? We're one of the branches of the family. Granny Zhao was also furious. Miss Wu, I'm going to see the old lady now and I'll ask her about this. Feng Wu only smiled. Be patient. Miss Wu, patient? How could they be patient? Start cleaning up the place. Feng Wu gave a succinct instruction. But, Feng Wu cut Qiuling off. Do you think the old lady doesn't know about this? Feng Wu snickered. That tough old lady who needs to control everything, let other people make the decision for her? Do you think that's what happened? The old lady, Qiuling cried out in surprise. Back then, the old lady couldn't have been any more affectionate toward Miss Wu. She doted on this granddaughter, and had all the resources of the Feng clan ready at Miss Wu's disposal. But now, you do realize that I'm not really useless, right? Feng Wu smiled. The pendulum swings both ways. Let's just wait and see. Everyone was enlightened by Feng Wu's words. That was true. Their mistress was awesome. She had reached level 9 of the spiritual master stage in a few months after she resumed her cultivation. By the standard of education in the Empire, Miss Wu, a girl of 13, was equivalent to an intermediate school graduate, and was already qualified to apply to the Imperial College. Everyone was relieved at the thought. They could barely contain their excitement at the thought of all the embarrassed faces out there once everyone else learned that Miss Wu had recovered her talents. They felt like jumping around in excitement. Yes, that's right. I can't wait to see the looks on their faces. It'll be so much fun. After regaining peace of mind, Granny Zhao and Qiuling were full of vigor again. They went off to pull up the weeds, repair the roof, and dust the rooms. After leaving the courtyard, Feng Lu went directly to Lady Wang's flying snow building with a bunch of maids and nannies trailing behind her. Mum. Feng Lu threw herself at Lady Wang like a butterfly. Holding her mother's arm, she said in a cloying voice, Mum, guess where I was just now? Lady Wang had just come back from the old lady's conscience hall. Seeing how happy Feng Lu was, she tapped her spoiled daughter lightly on her forehead. You were with Feng Wu. Mum, why are you so clever? You really are the best mother in the world. Feng Lu was a spoiled little girl around her mother. Lady Wang smiled. How's that family doing? Ha ha ha, Feng Lu guffawed. We had them enter through the side gate when they arrived, and the main gate wasn't even open. Then we led them all the way to that shabby fallen star yard. Chapter 295 Shocked. Chapter 295 Shocked. Ha! Fallen Star Yard. Mum, don't you think that's the perfect name for Feng Wu? What had once been the brightest of the imperial capital had fallen and had lain in the dust ever since. Lady Wang poked Feng Lu lightly in her forehead. Keep your voice down. Feng Lu couldn't care less. Why should I? I can laugh as loud as I want and there's nothing she can do about it. Plus, so what if she hears me? What can that cripple do to me now? I can strike her down with a single slap. Not only am I laughing right now, I did so right in her face. And what was her reaction? Something flickered in Lady Wang's eyes. What can she possibly do? She might look all calm, but she must have been all furious inside. There's nothing she can do to me, so she had to swallow the humiliation. Ha ha, Mum, you have no idea how sorry Feng Wu looked. Who would have thought that she was so brilliant just 5 years ago? Back then, Feng Wu's gaze had been so sharp that one glance from her was enough to make Feng Lu shudder. Is she that helpless now? Lady Wang asked in a seemingly casual tone. Of course. Come, Mum. I'll show you what a sorry state they're in now. Feng Lu then dragged Lady Wang to Fallen Star Yard. Feng Lu couldn't hold back her excitement on the way. Fallen Star Yard has been deserted for so long and the weeds are about as tall as I am. There are snakes, rats, and insects everywhere and it's so remote. Isn't Feng Wu's little mother a coward and a neat freak? I'd like to see her live there. Feng Lu was confident that Feng Wu had been putting on an act as a tough girl. She definitely started crying the moment Feng Lu turned to leave. The door to Fallen Star Yard was closed tight, as if it was shutting out the outside world. Mum, let's open the door quietly. Feng Wu will be caught by surprise and we'll see how sorry she looks. Ha ha. After that, Feng Lu let go of Lady Wang's hand, ran up to the door, and kicked it. Crack. The wooden door was already rotten and Feng Lu's foot got stuck in the hole she made. Before she could draw her foot back, the plank in the door fell forward at the momentum, and it took Feng Lu with it. Flustered, Feng Lu reached out to grab Kaiwe. Poor Kaiwe. She could have easily stopped Feng Lu from falling, but she seemed to have stepped on something and lost her footing. Immediately, both girls fell forward together. Miss Lu! All the maids and nannies were exasperated, and they tried their best to stop Feng Lu from falling. But they were too late. Feng Lu fell onto the door face first, and she had never looked more sorry. The maids and nannies behind her all seemed to slip and everyone fell forward. Everything happened so fast that it looked like they had been pulled forward by an invisible string. Thump, thump, thump. Lady Wang had come with a large entourage, which consisted of as many as a dozen maids and nannies. And all 12 people fell onto Feng Lu. And they crashed down hard. Bang! One body smashed onto Feng Lu. That hurt. Thud, thud, thud. Another 11 followed and Feng Lu nearly burst into tears. Behind them, Lady Wang watched in disbelief. She was shocked. Chapter 296, The Resourceful Feng Wu. Chapter 296, The Resourceful Feng Wu. Lady Wang watched this with a gaping mouth. Feng Lu had dragged her here to have a good laugh at Feng Wu's branch of the family. However, they had become jokes themselves before even setting foot in Feng Wu's yard. Lady Wang blushed profusely. This was so embarrassing. Hiding behind the door, Qiuling almost burst out laughing when she saw the sorry state Feng Lu and her minions were in. She put her hands over her mouth immediately to muffle her laughter. Miss Wu was so smart and the grumpy Miss Lu looked like an idiot in comparison. Hearing the noise, Feng Wu and her family came out, looking surprised. Feng Wu guffawed inwardly when she saw the farce outside, but she only reacted with a frown. Why is everyone falling over everyone else? Feng Lu, what did you do to my door? Feng Lu heard this when her maids and nannies were rushing over to help her to her feet. Seeing what an embarrassing fool she had made of herself, Feng Lu was furious. She pointed at Feng Wu with a trembling finger and couldn't think of what to say. You. Feng Wu frowned. I admit that you were very rude earlier, but I really didn't expect you to apologize with a kowtow. Feng Lu stammered. You. Feng Wu. Feng Wu blinked her pretty black eyes, which shone like clear water. She looked perfectly innocent as she said, Why are you not here to apologize? Seeing this, Lady Wang shook her head inwardly. She had considered Feng Lu a smart girl, but that was when the girl was on her own. When Feng Wu was around, Feng Lu's inferiority was so apparent that it was cruel to try and compare them. As Feng Lu's mother, Lady Wang obviously didn't want to see her own daughter humiliated like this. Hence, she entered the courtyard at a graceful gait, with her maids at her elbows. Lady Wang put on the warmest smile, looking all kind and gracious. She then said to Feng Wu, Xiao Wu, your sister was so happy and wanted to see you as soon as possible. She was in such a hurry that she bumped into your door accidentally. How careless of her! Lady Wang's tone was as warm as her smile, and she held Feng Wu's slim arm as she walked, looking all affectionate. Xiao Wu, the two of you used to enjoy rough and tumble play when you were little. I see that the habit hasn't changed after 5 years, which says a lot about how close the two of you still are, despite those 5 years. I'm so glad. Feng Wu darted a glance at Lady Wang with a half-smile. Lady Wang was nothing like her simple-minded daughter. Behind that benevolent and gentle smile, she had the heart of a wolf. She was someone who harbored a serpent in her bosom and had a habit of stabbing others in the back. The lady was as cunning as an old fox. Without so much as batting an eyelash, she had turned Feng Lu's boorish behavior into an expression of sisterly love. That way, no one would be able to criticize Feng Lu for it if word got out. Lady Wang had taken some painstaking effort to keep Feng Lu out of trouble. Lady Wang was displeased by Feng Wu's silent smile. She felt as if the girl had seen through her right away in spite of her carefully prepared performance. This was why she had disliked Feng Wu ever since the girl was little, for the girl's knowing black eyes seemed to be able to see through all the plots and hypocritical acts in the world. Lady Wang could no longer keep up her performance. Letting go of Feng Wu's hand, she took the beautiful lady's hand instead and said in an affectionate voice, "Sister-in-law, it's been years since we last met. How have you been? You look so thin. Don't worry. Now that you're back, everything will be fine." Chapter 297, The Old Fox. Chapter 297, The Old Fox. The beautiful lady obviously didn't like Lady Wang. Fear flickered in her limpid eyes, and she tried her best to draw her hand back. However, Lady Wang's grip was very tight. The lady was on the verge of tears. She turned to Feng Wu and pleaded with her eyes. Feng Wu went up to them and took Lady Wang by the wrist. "We're back now and everything's going to be fine? My dear aunt, if that's the case, can we perhaps have our flower butterfly yard back?" The smile froze on Lady Wang's face. This was exactly why she didn't like Feng Wu. The kid would always disregard the feelings of others and get right to the point, embarrassing everyone. Before Lady Wang could reply, Feng Lu snorted. "I've been living in flower butterfly yard for 5 years and it's mine. Why should we give it to you? You people are robbers. You want to rob me of my home as soon as you come back." Robbers? I finally know what "a robber acts like a cop" means. Feng Wu gave her a half-smile. "You!" Seeing that Feng Lu was going to fight with Feng Wu again, Lady Wang smacked her forehead. Why did her daughter get agitated so easily? She had no choice but to intervene. "Xiao Wu, I know flower butterfly yard used to belong to your branch of the family, but someone else must have lived there before you moved in. So technically, it isn't yours. Moreover, you were crippled, your brother became seriously ill, your mother lost her mind, and your father went missing. All this made your grandmother think that the house was cursed and would only bring bad luck to the family. She wanted to set fire to it. Xiao Lu stepped out then, and bravely said that she would live there and turn bad luck into good. And she was right. The Feng clan has been living peacefully for the last 5 years. Everything's been going well and there hasn't been any misfortune." Lady Wang spoke in her gentle voice. She knew perfectly when to pause, when to stress her words, and when to lower her pitch. She was an expert storyteller, which was what her husband loved the most about her. She then turned to Feng Wu with an aggrieved look on her face. "Xiao Wu, you're talking about Xiao Lu taking your house, but she's actually doing you a great favor by removing all the ill fortune for you. You don't have to thank her for it, but I'm really sad to hear you misunderstand her like this." Feng Lu stared at her mother with an open mouth. That was incredible. Her dear mother had turned Feng Lu's occupation of Feng Wu's property into an act of averting disaster, which was practically calling black white. That way, Feng Lu could keep flower butterfly yard, and not only couldn't Feng Wu accuse her of it, she had to thank her. "Mother, you're so clever." The beautiful lady was flustered and sweat covered her smooth forehead. No, that's not true." Feng Lu scoffed at Feng Wu. Could her mother say anything else apart from no? Feng Wu darted a glance at Feng Lu. "So what? My mother is beautiful." Feng Lu was speechless. Feng Wu then gave Lady Wang a half-smile. So, you're saying that flower butterfly yard is ominous. Is that it? That's right, said Lady Wang. Even now, snakes and rats still crawl in every now and then, even after your sister moved in. That's how unpleasant the place is. Xiao Wu, you've lost your cultivation, and your mother is. I'm really doing this for your own good. That house is not for you. I see. Feng Wu smirked. Is a shabby yard like this the only thing for us then? Chapter 298 Aunt, how kind of you. Chapter 298 Aunt, how kind of you. The tables and chairs all have parts missing and the plates are all cracked. Aunt, you're the one who manages the household affairs in this manner, aren't you? Is this how you do your job? Maybe I should go talk to my uncle. Feng Wu's uncle, Lady Wang's husband, wasn't known for rectitude, but he cared about his reputation above all else, and Feng Wu knew exactly how to manipulate him. Lady Wang knew Feng Yanfeng's temperament only too well. She had no choice but to squeeze a reply out through gritted teeth. There's really no need to mention those things. I was going to have them changed for you later. Xiao Wu, what kind of evil person do you take me for? Do you think I'll mistreat your family? Feng Wu's bright eyes met Lady Wang's gaze, and she smiled knowingly at the latter. Lady Wang almost gave up on her act every time she saw that look in Feng Wu's eyes. And, Lady Wang went on with her performance, you shouldn't have done all this dirty work of weeding and mending the roof yourself. I brought people here with me just for that. You should have waited for me. Lady Wang heaved a deep sigh and looked at Feng Wu with pity. You must have gotten used to all the hardship out there if you're doing everything yourself. We're a noble family. Crippled or not, you're still a young lady of the Feng family. Someone with your distinguished status shouldn't never dirty your hands with hard labor like this. She then turned to scold the beautiful lady. How can you raise a daughter of the Feng clan into a wild girl like this? Mother is going to reproach you if she learns about this. Lady Wang was fuming inside. How could she not? She and Feng Lu had planned to see Feng Wu and her family crying their eyes out. However, Feng Lu had turned herself into a laughingstock before even setting foot in the yard, giving Feng Wu a chance to jeer at her. After they entered the courtyard, they saw that not only wasn't the family crying, they had even cleaned up the shabby fallen star yard. Instead, Lady Wang had been taunted by Feng Wu over and over again until the former promised to send them the necessities. Her original plan had been to stall until Feng Wu pleaded with her in tears. Feng Wu smiled at Lady Wang. Aunt, you're mistaken. Surely not. How adorable you used to be. Look at how rough you are now. Feng Wu smiled. Aunt, I see you care for me a lot. Of course I do. Don't you remember? I always treated you like one of my own. That was true. Back when Feng Wu was the little genius, her aunt had indeed been very nice to her and took care of every aspect of her life. However, once she fell. Feng Wu smiled again. Aunt, did you bring all these people here to help us tidy up Fallen Star Yard? Of course. I could never bring myself to see you do everything on your own. Look at you. Your face is smeared with dirt. Lady Wang took out her handkerchief, wanting to wipe Feng Wu's face for her. Feng Wu smiled at her. I guess I should thank you in advance then. What? Lady Wang was baffled. Feng Wu opened a door, revealing the filthy room within. Your people will have a lot of work to do. The room was lit up by the light coming in through the window. They could see everything, the damp floor, the cracked walls, and a rat scuttling away. The yard was so clean, and Feng Wu had mentioned broken plates. Chapter 299 Feng Wu, you really are. Chapter 299 Feng Wu, you really are. Lady Wang thought that Feng Wu had finished tidying up the whole place, but as it turned out, the rooms had remained untouched. A faint smile emerged on Feng Wu's face. Aunt, you look surprised. Are you trying to figure out if there's another empty courtyard that we can move into? Lady Wang was rendered speechless. She then gave Feng Wu a wry smile. You're making fun of your aunt here. We would never have let you settle down here if there was another empty courtyard. So? Feng Wu asked casually. Well, I was just thinking about how many people I should send over to clean the place for you, since it's so dirty here. Feng Wu smiled. What's there to think about? You've brought over a dozen servants with you, haven't you? They'll suffice. It wasn't that Lady Wang couldn't bear to see her servants get their hands dirty. It was just that she felt so defeated. She thought she would be a gloating onlooker, but as it turned out, it was Feng Wu who was having all the fun. Despite her unwillingness, Lady Wang had to admit her defeat in this first round. Furthermore, she had made all these grand promises, and she would only humiliate herself further by going back on her word. Lady Wang had no choice but to instruct her servants to start cleaning. As for herself, she made up some random excuse and left with Feng Lu shortly afterward. Before she left, she winked at Granny Gui. As Lady Wang's head chambermaid, Granny Gui took the hint right away and smiled knowingly. Miss Wu had forced them to do hard labor for her. The young lady was biting off more than she could chew. Granny Gui and the others spared no effort in tidying up the place, for they had to keep up their superficial charm. As for what they did when no one was looking, that was a completely different story. Fallen Star Yard was cleaned up in no time, and all the daily necessities were sent over. Lady Wang even ordered the broken plank in the door to be replaced. After all, it was a great concern for her. She worried that other people might ask about Fallen Star Yard's missing door, and when that happened, Feng Wu might take the opportunity to vividly describe what had happened today, which would turn Feng Lu into a laughingstock. Flying snow building. Feng Lu sat angrily on a chaise longue and glared at Lady Wang. Didn't we say that we were going to make them suffer? Why did you send all those things to them? And why did you let Granny Gui and the others help her? Feng Wu isn't worth it. Lady Wang looked at Feng Lu in resignation. After 5 years, Feng Wu is still useless cultivation-wise, but she's still the same genius in all other aspects. Xiao Lu, you can't beat her. What? Feng Lu bolted up and glowered at her mother. Mum, how can you say such things about your daughter? Are you comparing me with that useless girl? You're humiliating me. Why can't I beat her? Feng Lu was so angry. Her own mother was looking down on her. Lady Wang rubbed her forehead and felt that she was getting a headache. You. Just then, Granny Gui came back with the other servants, their clothes all smeared with dirt. Lady Wang sent them away to clean up. After briefly cleaning herself up, Granny Gui came back in. All done. Lady Wang held a white porcelain cup in her hands, verdant green tea leaves floating in the water. A ruby ring twinkled on her little finger. Yes? Granny Gui gloated. I buried it in a corner when they weren't looking. That family won't see it coming. Lady Wang smiled in satisfaction. Feng Wu, you really. Chapter 300. Restrain yourself, keep a low profile, and maintain your composure. Chapter 300. Restrain yourself, keep a low profile, and maintain your composure. She brought it on herself. That's so true. Granny Gui beamed at her mistress. Miss Wu made us stay behind to work for her, but she's forgotten that there's no such thing as a free lunch. What are you talking about? Feng Lu was at a loss. I don't understand. It's fine. Xiao Lu, didn't you want to see that branch of the family make a fool of themselves? Lady Wang smiled in a careless way. But Mum, didn't your scheme turn into a fiasco and Feng Wu forced you to do her bidding? Feng Lu blurted out the truth, which gave her mother a phantom headache. While Lady Wang rubbed her forehead in resignation, Granny Gui smiled at Feng Lu. Miss Lu, you'll see what this is about tomorrow morning. It'll be a great show over there in that branch, so make sure you get up early to watch it. Feng Lu's eyes lit up as bright as stars. Are you sure? You can take my word for it. Granny Gui gloated. She had buried that thing herself, while putting some others in various spots. There was no escape for Feng Wu. Lady Wang looked out the window at the clear blue sky, her eyes glinting like sharp blades. That family should have stayed in the border city and lived out the rest of their days as good-for-nothings, but they just had to come back to the imperial capital to be humiliated. Everyone would admit that they had it coming. Fallen Star Yard. Qiuling couldn't stop smiling after Granny Gui and the other servants left. I thought that we would never be able to make this Fallen Star Yard habitable. Thanks to Lady Wang, we have everything we need now. Qiuling smiled into her palm. She was here to have a good laugh at us, wasn't she? I bet she's so pissed right now. Granny Zhao cast a stern look at Qiuling. Have you forgotten everything I taught you? Restrain yourself, keep a low profile, and maintain your composure. All right, Qiuling massaged her cheeks, which were sore from all the grinning. I'm just too happy to see Lady Wang reap what she sowed. It's still too early to say that. Granny Zhao gave Qiuling a meaningful look, then turned to Feng Wu. Miss Wu, when Qiulan, Lady Wang's chambermaid, struck up a conversation with me as a distraction, I saw Granny Gui bury something herself. Qiuling was surprised. What did she bury? How come she had no idea? Granny Zhao glared at Qiuling. You were too absorbed in taking pleasure in their little misfortune to notice anything else. Do you have any idea how many people are plotting against Miss Wu and using the most covert schemes? You're so careless. How can I leave Miss Wu in your care? Feng Wu only watched as Granny Zhao excoriated Qiuling and didn't intervene. Veterans were always more capable than recruit. Granny Zhao had noticed a small detail like this when Qiuling had missed it, which said a lot. Qiuling was warm-hearted and meticulous in taking care of Feng Wu's daily needs, but she was nothing like Granny Zhao when it came to guarding against the harm others might do them. And this was just the beginning. The imperial capital was an ever-changing city, and schemes and plots were bound to come at them non-stop. Feng Wu would rather that Qiuling was scolded and she learned to be cautious now than have her come to grief in the future. Hence Feng Wu said nothing. She only went to the yard and dug out what Granny Gui had buried. Seeing that Granny Zhao was telling the truth, Qiuling blanched. She hadn't noticed anything. If her mistress had really fallen victim to this. Qiuling burst into tears. Feng Wu was amused. Don't cry, you poor girl. Just be more careful in the future. Everyone has to learn along the way. Use your brain, that's all. Chapter 301, She'll be busy soon. Chapter 301, She'll be busy soon. What is it? Qiuling asked as she wiped away her tears, her eyes still red from crying. What were they going to do to Miss Wu? Feng Wu unwrapped a palm-sized bundle, revealing an object that resembled a bar of soap. She gave it a sniff and snorted. It's spring breeze powder. What's that? Qiuling asked curiously. Granny Zhao's and Uncle Chio's faces turned livid at that name. Feng Wu said, It's something that'll cause a man and a woman to be consumed by lust. Gosh! Qiuling covered her mouth in astonishment. That's oh God! Lady Wang wanted them dead. Feng Wu smiled. When that lady tries something, it's always in 2s or 3s. This can't be the only thing. What do we do now? Feng Wu said nothing. Instead, she took the cub out of her chest pocket. The little thing was eager to try itself. Feng Tutu had slept on the entire journey, and was now ready for some action. After jumping out of Feng Wu's arms, it headed right for the kitchen. Everyone followed it curiously. Feng Tutu hopped onto the stove and began to dig diligently, puffing at the effort. Before long, a dark green pellet the size of a pigeon egg emerged. What's this? Everyone turned to Feng Wu for an answer. Picking up the pellet, Feng Wu smirked after taking just one look. It's black Qilin 1 venom. Qiuling asked, What's black Qilin venom? Feng Wu smiled a little, but her eyes were cold. As the name suggests, it comes from the venom of the black qilin, and creates a colorless and odorless toxic gas when heated. The woman really planned it well. By burying it in the stove, the toxin will get into the food and gradually poison us. Once it accumulates, Qiuling and the others blanched. What an insidious scheme! As if that spring breeze powder wasn't abhorrent enough, she had to top it off with black qilin venom. The woman wanted to make sure that Feng Wu and her family were ruined. This is pure evil. Lady Wang is so. Qiuling clenched her fists and gritted her teeth. She sounds so nice and caring in front of other people, as if she cares about us so much. Who would have thought that she could be this malicious? A honey tongue and a heart of gall. That woman is so dreadful. Feng Wu nodded. She had revealed this to everyone not to scare them, but to remind them that they should be aware at all times and remain vigilant. Looking around, Feng Wu said calmly, "People like Feng Lu with her empty arrogance aren't our most formidable enemies. However, we have to be cautious around someone like Lady Wang, who hides a dagger in her smile. From now on, if Lady Wang summons you or invites my mother over, you know what to do." "We won't go. Not for all the orders in the world. We'll stall until Miss Wu gets back," Qiuling said earnestly. Feng Wu chuckled when she saw how alert Qiuling was. "You don't have to be on edge. As long as that lady is busy, she won't have time to bother us." "But she's not busy," Qiuling said. "She has servants to run errands for her. All she needs to do is give orders. No, she'll be very busy very soon." That night, a figure leapt out of Fallen Star Yard, nimble as a cat. She jumped around in the dark and quickly made her way into Flower Butterfly Yard. Having grown up in Flower Butterfly Yard, Feng Wu knew the place like the back of her hand. Footnotes. Chapter 302, How Dare She Humiliate Me Like This? Chapter 302, How Dare She Humiliate Me Like This? Flower Butterfly Yard consisted of 3 courtyards and a lot of rooms. At this time of the year, the garden was filled with blossoming flowers and the view was spectacular. Feng Wu knew exactly which room Feng Lu was in without having to ask around. Who was the person Feng Lu hated most? Feng Wu, obviously. She had taken Flower Butterfly Yard away for no reason other than it used to be Feng Wu's home. Hence, her room would be none other than Feng Wu's old bedchamber. Feng Wu followed the familiar path that led to her perching phoenix pavilion. As the name suggested, it was where a phoenix was supposed to perch. Because Feng Wu had been born with the mysterious, powerful true phoenix blood, which hadn't appeared in the Feng clan for 1,000 years, everyone in the clan had been thrilled and her living quarters had hence been named Perching Phoenix Pavilion. Outside the building, a tall Chinese parasol tree stood upright in the yard. With the help of the tree trunk, Feng Wu jumped onto the roof of Perching Phoenix Pavilion, as swift as a swallow. The inside of Perching Phoenix Pavilion was brightly lit. And Feng Wu could hear people talking. "Kaiwe, remember to wake me up early tomorrow. Miss, you've always stayed in bed in the morning." "Are you sure? Why do you even ask?" "Of course I'm sure. You have no idea what fun we'll have tomorrow." "Ha ha ha ha." Feng Lu was so thrilled that she rolled around in bed. "Miss, what kind of fun will there be? Do you mind giving me a hint?" Feng Lu was so eager to tell someone and had only paused for effect so that Kaiwe would ask. She answered the question promptly. "Ha ha ha. Feng Wu's reputation will be ruined for good tomorrow." "Ha ha. But how is that possible? In this manner?" "Heh." Feng Lu snorted. "Too bad that Feng Xiaoqi isn't here. I would have made him part of the farce if he were around. Imagine how much fun that would be. Well, no worries. After Feng Wu is dead, I can easily take care of Feng Xiaoqi on my own." Outside, Feng Wu heard every word. She couldn't for the life of her figure out what she had ever done to Feng Lu to make the girl hold such a grudge against her. Why did Feng Lu hate her so much? Miss, why do you want Miss Wu dead? Kaiwe asked the question Feng Wu wanted to ask. She wanted me dead first. Feng Lu flared up as she walked down memory lane. Do you know how she used to treat me? Before, she was this genius that was so superior. She was the future of the Feng clan, and she had first claim on all the resources in the family. The other kids like us had a monthly allowance of a measly 3 spirit stones. Do you know what she did? She acted all sincere and handed me 3 spirit stones, saying that they were a gift for my cultivation. Ha! A gift? For me? My father is the eldest son of my grandfather, and all the resources of the clan belong to us, the first branch of the clan. How dare she bestow a gift on me? She was using my resources and she was making a gift out of it? Who does she think she is? I told her that I would pay her back after I grew up, and do you know what she said? She told me no need to bother, for they were just some little spirit stones. Ha ha ha, little spirit stones. She knew perfectly well that those spirit stones were vital for my cultivation and I couldn't get my hands on them no matter what. She humiliated me like that. How dare she show off in front of me? Who the hell does she think she is? At that moment, I felt like tearing her throat open with my teeth. Outside, Feng Wu recalled this incident. She had only been 5 and Feng Lu was even younger. She had no idea that Feng Lu would still be bothered by this and that she had been so narrow-minded at that young age. Ha 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 ha. Karma really is a bitch. Feng Lu said. Chapter 303, You Tried to Harm My Family First. Chapter 303, You Tried to Harm My Family First. We've come full circle and my family is finally on top. Feng Wu is a good-for-nothing now. Ah. She's useless. When that happened, everyone in the clan was devastated, but I laughed for 3 days. Feng Lu's eyes glinted coldly. The others have no idea who did it to Feng Wu, but I do. I saw it and I didn't come back to get help. I wanted her dead. She survived, but her cultivation was ruined, which pleased me more than seeing her dead. That way I could humiliate her, laugh at her, and taunt her as much as I want. She's just a piece of garbage now. She got lucky. They banished her to northern border city, where she got to live in peace for 5 years, but I was never going to let her have peace. Hence, we went to northern border city just to bring her back. Only that way can I go on abusing her, bullying her, and humiliating her. Trying to take His Royal Highness from me was her worst decision ever. His Royal Highness is mine and everyone that competes with me must die. Even Zhuo Qingluan. Feng Lu's face twisted. Although, I'll deal with Zhuo Qingluan later. Feng Wu is my top priority now. I'll show His Royal Highness what a slut Feng Wu is. Miss you. Haha, Kaiwe, remember to go to the clan stable before dawn and unleash the spiritual beasts we keep there. They'll know where to go. Miss. Did you hear me? Yes. Kaiwe was shaken. She had no idea that Miss Lu could be this malicious. But if this gets out, your reputation will be affected as well. Kaiwe tried to talk her out of it. Mother won't let it get out, neither will grandmother. So, the only solution is, ho-ho. The more she thought about it, the more conceited Feng Lu became. Feng Wu stood right outside the window, and she heard every word of their conversation. She knew that Feng Lu wanted her dead, but she had no idea that her hatred stemmed from such petty things. Feng Lu had been quite adorable when she was little. She used to follow Feng Wu around and call her Sister Wu. Feng Wu had pitied her, which was why she had given her those spirit stones. Little did she know that Feng Lu was such an ungrateful and vicious girl. Feng Wu's eyes darkened. Night had fallen. Feng Wu smiled a little. The shut window opened quietly. Instead of going in directly, Feng Wu blew some soporific incense into the room first. Feng Wu had made the incense herself. It was colorless and odorless, but very potent. In less than a minute, the person inside was breathing slowly and steadily. Feng Lu had fallen asleep. Feng Wu jumped into the room, as nimble as a cat. She then threw Feng Lu over her shoulder before heading to where the spiritual beasts were kept. She didn't want her old room ruined by the spiritual beast. The spiritual beast farm. When the spiritual beasts were mature enough, they would usually be used as personal mounts by members of the clan. There were wolves, bears, cheetahs, and tigers. Which one should she pick? In the end, Feng Wu chose a firewolf. Looking at Feng Lu, who was fast asleep, Feng Wu took a deep breath. Feng Lu, you wanted to harm my family first. I'm only doing to you what you were trying to do to me. Even that spring breeze powder was from your mother. If you can pray, pray that your mother's spring breeze powder isn't too potent. Otherwise, I'm not sure that you will survive this. Walking into the stable where the firewolf was kept, Feng Wu buried the spring breeze powder there, then looked back at Feng Lu. Chapter 304 Pay them back in their own coin. Chapter 304 Pay them back in their own coin. Once the spring breeze powder was in place, Feng Wu tossed Feng Lu on the ground. Raising her head, she looked right into the firewolf's scarlet eyes. Firewolves were big, strong beasts that were twice the size of a grown man. Their long, flowing fur gave them a majestic look. Feng Wu patted the firewolf's head. Sorry about this, buddy. She left after that. Once outside, she carefully closed the door behind her and locked it. The night wind was chilly on her skin as Feng Wu darted one last grim look at Feng Lu. Your mother was the one who came up with this plan, and that spring breeze powder was put in place by her people. So, I feel no qualms about doing this to you. Feng Wu still had another object in her hand, the black qilin venom the size of a pigeon egg. Since she was going to pay them back in their own coin, it went without saying that she would use it on Lady Wang. Something cold glinted in Feng Wu's bright eyes. Soon, her nimble figure disappeared into the darkness. Shortly afterward, she appeared inside Flying Snow Building, where Lady Wang lived. Feng Wu jumped around swiftly in the building and was soon outside Lady Wang's bedchamber. As cautious as ever, Feng Wu didn't use the soporific incense right away, but had to listen first. Someone was snoring loudly inside. She realized that Lady Wang wasn't the only one inside. Feng Yanfeng, her eldest uncle, was also there. About this uncle of hers, well, Feng Wu couldn't be bothered to comment. Suffice to say, if he had been as kind as he ought to be, Feng Wu's family would never have been driven off into exile. Feng Wu hadn't come back to the imperial capital for revenge. She wouldn't stir things up herself, but she wouldn't hesitate to fight back either if she became a target. This soporific incense which Feng Wu had made herself wasn't available anywhere on the market, no matter how much a buyer was willing to pay. Using a thin straw, Feng Wu blew the incense smoke into the room. She waited 5 minutes for the knockout effect to work, then pushed the door open and marched in. Her uncle and aunt were fast asleep. In a censer a few steps away, some incense was burning. Feng Wu had thought about burying the poison in Lady Wang's kitchen, but then decided otherwise, fearing that she might harm innocent people. Now, under the dim moonlight coming in through the window, Feng Wu fixed her eyes on that censer. The censer was quite sizable, and was only cleaned out every once in a while. Feng Wu's mouth curled into a smile. Lady Wang had a habit of burning incense at night, without which she couldn't sleep. Hence, Feng Wu figured out the perfect way to put this black qilin venom to use. Grind it into a powder and sprinkle it into the censer. Once that was completed, Feng Wu took a look at her aunt, who was still sound asleep, and smiled. After that, Feng Wu disappeared into the dark again. She was back in Fallen Star Yard in no time. The lights were still on. Qiuling heaved a sigh of relief when she saw Feng Wu. "Miss Wu, how did it go?" The beautiful lady had gone to bed on time like clockwork, and by now, she was already fast asleep. However, Qiuling and Granny Zhao had been worried about Feng Wu and waited up for her. Feng Wu grinned. Of course everything went as planned. I wouldn't have it any other way. Qiuling and Granny Zhao let out breaths of relief. Feng Wu urged, go to bed. We're going to face a tough battle tomorrow. However, after Feng Wu went to bed, little did she know that something very unexpected was about to happen. Yuminji, that teenager whom Feng Wu had met in Frozen Forest a while ago. Chapter 305, A Naked Girl. Chapter 305, A Naked Girl. He had finally reached an agreement with his 3 elders and was given permission to stay in the imperial capital for a while. The first person Yuminji thought of when he arrived at the imperial capital wasn't Jun Linyuan, his lifelong rival, but Feng Wu. Hence, he began to ask around about the girl. Since her return from the border city, Feng Wu had become the topic of conversation in the city once more. She used to be this genius with the most promising future. However, when she came back this time, her name was connected to slander, rumors, and libel. It was only unfavorable news. Good for nothing, useless, losing her head over love. The people of the city crowned her with all the unpleasant labels they could think of. Needless to say, the Zhuo family and the younger generation of the Feng family had a lot to do with the spread of the rumors. Yuminji found everything so frustrating. He wouldn't have felt this way if he didn't know Feng Wu, but he did. To him, the girl was smart, wickedly funny, pretty, sharp-tongued, and a free spirit. He simply couldn't bring himself to dislike her. To Yuminji, Feng Wu was a brilliant girl second only to the ugly girl. How can these people say such things about little Feng Wu? Do they even know her? I bet Xiao Wu is so upset right now. Yuminji's heart went out to Feng Wu. He couldn't help but let his imagination run wild. A slim figure wearing a white robe hid herself in a dark corner with her arms around her knees. Her eyes were teary as she wept into her lap. Such was the picture Yuminji drew in his head. He clenched his fists in vexation. No. He had to go to Feng Wu. Hence, Yuminji climbed over the wall of the Feng Manor the first night after Feng Wu came back. The manor was adequately guarded, but Yuminji had 3 very capable elders. With their help, Yuminji entered the manor without breaking a sweat. At this hour, almost everyone was in bed. Yuminji couldn't find a person to ask for directions even if he wanted to. However, when he focused his attention, he noticed strange noises in the eastern part of the place. Yuminji, the professional pleasure seeker, couldn't resist his curiosity. He headed in that direction right away. And what he saw turned out to be an eyesore. In the centermost part of the spiritual beast farm, an animal was snarling, accompanied by the sound of tearing cloth. Tearing cloth. Yuminji blushed profusely. It was shameless. Fornication with a beast in the middle of the night. How thirsty did that person have to be? However, he didn't want to ruin the person's night. Covering his ears with both hands, Yuminji decided to take flight. The torn clothes then flew over the fence, and Yuminji saw it under the bright moonlight. What? That dress looked so familiar. He thought he had seen it somewhere before. But where? He had only met 2 girls after leaving his court. One was the ugly girl and the other one was little Feng Wu. Shit! Yuminji suddenly remembered all the stories he had heard earlier today. Those people called little Feng Wu a good-for-nothing and said that she was crazy in love. They also said that she wouldn't survive much longer in the imperial capital. Yuminji had a sharp nose and he soon recognized the smell of spring breeze powder in the air. Gosh, was that little Feng Wu in there? Had someone set her up? Yuminji was exasperated. He rushed in right away, knocking down an entire wall. As soon as he set foot inside, he saw a fair, naked girl under a giant firewolf. Her face was out of sight, but she had a very slim body. Little Feng Wu. Yuminji's eyes widened in astonishment. He charged at the wolf. Chapter 306, Oh God! Chapter 306. Oh God! Yuminji charged out and swung his fist at the firewolf, sending the animal flying backward. It hit a wall and blood gushed out of its mouth. Once the wolf was taken care of, Yuminji took the girl's hand. Little Feng Wu, don't be afraid. I'm here for you. After that, he took off his robe and wrapped it around the girl. Outside, the bright moon was hidden behind thick clouds. Yuminji had taken the girl for Feng Wu without giving it another thought. Throwing her on his back, he dashed off and disappeared from the spiritual beast farm in the blink of an eye. Right now, all Feng Lu wore was the robe that Yuminji had wrapped around her. Resting on Yuminji's back, her firm breasts pressed against the teenager's back. Yuminji stiffened right away and his mind went blank. Shit. Yuminji's legs almost gave out and his mouth felt dry. Little Feng Wu was really seductive tonight. Did she like him? Yuminji had butterflies in his stomach as that thought popped into his head. He smiled like a little kid. Yuminji had no idea that he was carrying Feng Lu on his back. Feng Lu, on the other hand, had no idea where she was either. Under the effect of the spring breeze powder, Feng Lu's body felt boneless and extremely aroused. Leaning on Yuminji's back, she rested her head on his nape, and Yuminji could feel her hot breath on his ears. It felt so sensual, especially with all the moaning she was doing. Yuminji thought his head was going to explode. This woman was incredible. Yuminji's muscles stiffened. He looked straight ahead and had to use all his strength to keep his breathing steady. Little Feng Wu, I'm warning you. Stop doing this. I have someone I like already. As soon as Yuminji began to speak, Feng Lu sensed his virility, which excited her greatly. The delirious girl trembled all over. She forgot about everything else. Wrapping her fair, slim arms around Yuminji's neck, she began to kiss and lick him. As a red-blooded virgin, Yuminji could never resist such temptation, not to mention that he had taken the girl for Feng Wu, the person that he had been thinking about. Hey! Little Feng Wu! I'm warning you! Stop it! Yuminji went completely stiff. Despite his harsh tone, he did nothing to stop her. Feng Lu had surrendered to this male body already. Her bloodshot eyes glistened and her vision had gone blurry. Staying on his back could no longer satisfy her. Hence, she began to struggle, trying to climb over his shoulder. You're impossible! Yuminji cursed, but he was rejoicing inside. He had never thought that the haughty little Feng Wu could be this passionate. He knew it. He knew that the girl was secretly in love with him. It was just that when he had brought it up earlier, all his elders had shaken their heads in unison. He was telling the truth. Yuminji let the girl climb over his shoulder. Just then, the thick clouds scattered and the moon shone brightly again. Yuminji could now see her face clearly, and he felt like he had been struck by a thunderbolt. Oh God! Yuminji thought he was going to lose his mind. The half-naked girl wrapped in his robe wasn't little Feng Wu at all? Chapter 307 Claim the Credit. Chapter 307 Claim the Credit. This wasn't little Feng Wu at all. Moreover, Yuminji realized that he had met this girl before. Yuminji let go and Feng Lu dropped to the ground with a loud thump. But that spring breeze powder was so potent. It was an aphrodisiac as well as a hallucinogenic drug, so powerful that it could make a person lose their head completely. As a result, Feng Lu's first reaction was to wrap herself around Yuminji's thigh and try to crawl up, regardless of the painful fall. Yuminji was almost driven mad. This woman. What was he supposed to do with this woman? So, the woman that had kissed him and seduced him wasn't little Feng Wu. Yuminji was disgusted by the thought of this woman's hands on him. He picked up Feng Lu and wrapped his fingers around her neck. Yuminji might look like a goofball around Feng Wu and Jun Linyuan, but he was first and foremost the sacred son of the Dark Court. He was born with violence running through his veins. A cruel and fierce look filled his eyes, which had been bright and mild a moment ago. Feng Lu couldn't breathe. In Yu Minji's hand, her neck felt as brittle as a toy. Yu Minji felt like killing her right there and then. Just then, footsteps came from outside. Yu Minji had his own agenda for coming here, and he had only chosen paths hidden by the big leafy trees. Hence, no one on the main path of the house would realize that he was only 10 meters away from them. But it was just before dawn and the sun could rise at any moment. The sky was lightening on the horizon. The Feng Manor's lower-rank servants were already getting up. Right now, 2 maids of lower rank were walking along the path. "Have you heard? Miss Wu is back." "Of course I have. It's like the biggest news these days." Sigh, poor Miss Wu. "You don't say. Northern Border City is so much better than here. Why did she have to come back?" "I heard that Lady Wang had them live in Fallen Star Yard." "You mean the one with the giant pagoda tree outside the yard?" "Yes, that one." The 2 cleaning girls walked away as they talked, but an idea struck Yu Minji, who had hidden behind some rocks. After his head cooled down, he recognized the girl in his arms. It was Feng Lu. She was Feng Wu's sister, and he had met her in Northern Border City. Yu Minji remembered that Feng Wu didn't look to be on good terms with this sister, but after all, they were family. Feng Wu would be mad at him if he strangled Feng Lu to death. He just had to rescue her from a giant fire wolf. He had saved Feng Wu's sister, and he was going to claim credit for it. Killing Feng Lu now would do him no good. However, if he brought Feng Lu to Feng Wu, well, Feng Wu would owe him a favor. Ho ho! Yu Minji was exhilarated. According to those maids, Feng Wu lived in Fallen Star Yard now, which had a big pagoda tree outside. Fallen Star Yard wasn't easy to find, but a yard with a big pagoda tree in the front was easy to spot. Yu Minji jumped onto the wall, and found the place after a quick look around. Once he had figured that out, Yu Minji picked up Feng Lu and headed for Fallen Star Yard right away. Dawn had yet to break, and it was that time of day when everyone was still sound asleep. Crack! Chapter 308 Black-Hearted. Chapter 308 Black-Hearted. There was a faint crackling sound. Feng Wu woke up with a start. She narrowed her eyes in the darkness, and a sharp dagger appeared in her hand. Who was it? Who would show up at this hour? It was too early for Lady Wang, for she wanted to ruin the reputation of Feng Wu's branch of the clan, so she would wait until everyone was up. So, who could it be? Feng Wu waited by the door, the dagger in her hand glinting coldly. Squeak! The door opened and a figure entered stealthily. Right at that moment, Feng Wu pressed the blade to the person's throat. Blood squirted out. Yu Minji's stomach lurched. He hadn't expected such a threat. Tossing Feng Lu onto the ground, he quickly reached for the dagger with his right hand. However, Feng Wu was one step ahead of him. In the dark, she circled around to Yu Minji's side, using a move from Phoenix Dance, then stabbed down at an acupoint on his waist. Just then, the moon shone into the room through the open door. Under the silver moonlight, Feng Wu made out the teenager's face. "Yu Minji!" Feng Wu cried out in surprise. Little Feng Wu! Yu Minji was even more surprised. Touching the shallow cut on his throat, he couldn't believe that Feng Wu had just given him that wound. This girl really was a little tiger deep down. However, Yu Minji wasn't what attracted Feng Wu's attention now, for under the moonlight she spotted Feng Lu on the ground. Feng Lu was still wrapped in Yu Minji's robe. The belt had loosened, exposing most of her breasts, which looked rather fair and tender under the silver moonlight. She couldn't stop moaning. Feng Wu was baffled. Her plans always worked perfectly, for she always made sure to consider the tiniest details in advance, but could someone please explain to her, what was Feng Lu doing here? The girl had been left with the firewolf. Why was she here now? Feng Wu narrowed her eyes and looked Yu Minji up and down with an indecipherable expression in her eyes. Yu Minji was here to claim credit. Without an invitation, he sat down in a chair, crossed his legs in a conceited manner, raised his chin, and gave Feng Wu a sidelong glance. Little Feng Wu, see that? Feng Wu nodded. Yup. Yuminji was gloating and failed to notice the conflicted look on Feng Wu's face. He went on flaunting his achievement. I came to your manor tonight to take a walk. Thinking that little Feng Wu would turn cocky if she knew that he was here tonight just for her, Yuminji made up a random excuse. I see that young Master Yu is enjoying life, Feng Wu said in a low voice, revealing none of her conflicting emotions. Yup. Crossing his legs at the knees, Yuminji went on. I was walking around when I heard something in the spiritual beast farm. I went to have a look and I was shocked. Your family's firewolf was trying to do dirty things to this girl. Feng Wu took a deep breath. Then? Yuminji couldn't tell her that he had mistaken Feng Lu for Feng Wu and that the girl had tried to stick her tongue in his mouth, so he said, I pushed that wolf away and saw that, oh my God, the girl who had almost been ravished was your sister. Feng Wu smacked her forehead. Yuminji grew more excited as he went on. I was astonished. I'm your friend, I guess? And I couldn't just stand there and let my friend's sister be ruined by an animal. What kind of person would that make me? Right? Chapter 309, Because You're Feng Wu. Chapter 309, Because You're Feng Wu. Gazing at Feng Wu, Yuminji pressed for a reply. Despite her urge to punch him in the face, Feng Wu took a deep breath and squeezed out a smile. Thank you, I guess. You guessed correctly. Yuminji was thrilled to hear a thank you from Feng Wu, but he feigned a displeased tone. I assumed that your sister wouldn't have gone to the firewolf and tried to fornicate with it voluntarily. Feng Wu said, no. And that firewolf wouldn't have dragged your sister there by itself either. Feng Wu said, no. I recognized the smell of spring breeze powder in the air. Yuminji darted an unhurried look at Feng Wu. Do you know what that is? Feng Wu said. You do realize that I'm a medicine refiner, right? That's right, you're a medicine refiner. But you know what? I'm pretty sure that someone set your sister up. Yuminji frowned. Who would do such a horrible thing to a young woman? Making her fornicate with a spiritual beast? That's just, well, your sister would have been ruined if it hadn't been for me. Feng Wu clenched her fists. Yes. How evil is the person behind all this? They're so black-hearted. That person is rotten to the core, and I bet they're too toxic inside to have any children of their own. Yuminji said indignantly. Feng Wu blanched and blushed, not sure what expression she should have on her face. She took a deep breath and said nothing. She felt like punching someone. Why are you drawing in your breath all the time? Yuminji looked at her in confusion. Feng Wu gave him a smile, which was more like a grimace. Yuminji went back to talking about Feng Lu. I know you and your sister don't get along, but she's still your sister and I saved her. How are you going to thank me for that? Ha 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 ha. Feng Wu was having a hard time controlling her temper, and she couldn't do it anymore. She had never been in the habit of stretching herself thin. Since she couldn't take it anymore, she decided to tell him everything. Hence, she turned her gaze on Yuminji and said in a cold voice, It was me. Yuminji looked bewildered. What was you? I did it. Feng Wu gave Yuminji a half-smile. That black-hearted person you're talking about was me. Ah! Yuminji had rarely been shocked growing up, but what Feng Wu said made him jump. He shuddered and sat there as his mouth fell open. Feng Wu gave him an indifferent sidelong glance. Now that the truth was out, Yuminji should be on his way, right? After all, he was so appalled by the person that had plotted the whole thing. Yuminji stared at Feng Wu unblinkingly then. He said angrily, What did she do to you? He didn't ask why and he didn't accuse Feng Wu of being so malicious. Instead, he was furious about whatever Feng Lu had done to Feng Wu. Feng Wu stared at Yuminji. What? What did she do? Are you hurt? Any losses? The concern in Yuminji's voice was genuine. That wasn't what Feng Wu had expected, and she was very surprised. From Yu Minji's tone earlier, the guy found the person behind all this repulsive. However, when she admitted what she had done, he worried about her well-being, instead of condemning her. You believe me? Feng Wu was too bewildered to say anything else. Of course I do. Yu Minji glared at Feng Wu. I couldn't have cared less about her if she wasn't your sister. That fire wolf could eat her whole and I wouldn't even blink. I only saved her because she's your sister. Chapter 310 Yu Minji is pissed. Chapter 310 Yu Minji is pissed. Feng Wu would be lying if she said she wasn't touched. All the silly things Yu Minji had done looked very adorable now. Don't you think that I'm a bad person? Feng Wu kept her gaze on Yu Minji. Yu Minji darted an unconcerned look at Feng Wu. Since when were you ever a good person? Feng Wu was speechless. Yu Minji went on. Good person or bad person, you're little Feng Wu and I'm always on your side. Feng Wu was speechless. What universe had she saved in her past life to earn such trust from Yu Minji? They barely knew each other, and she had even tricked Yu Minji multiple times when she was disguised as the ugly girl. Feng Wu decided that from now on, she would be nicer to Yu Minji. Hence, she told Yu Minji about Feng Lu's original plan. Yu Minji flared up after he heard the whole thing. What? That spring breeze powder was meant for Feng Wu? And it really could have been Feng Wu under that fire wolf? Yu Minji was furious. He went up to Feng Lu and grabbed her by her neck. His grip was so tight that Feng Wu could hear the cracking sound Feng Lu's neck made. She rushed over in a hurry and took Yu Minji's hand. Stop! Yu Minji glared at Feng Wu. I'm gonna kill her! Feng Wu snapped. There are a million ways to kill her, but you can't strangle her, especially not in my room. Yu Minji met Feng Wu's gaze. Are you asking me to keep her alive? Feng Wu nodded. For the time being. Just then, she heard some noise outside. Feng Wu was startled, for that meant that Qiuling and Granny Zhao were up. She would have so much explaining to do if they found Yu Minji here. Hence, Feng Wu told Yu Minji, take Feng Lu and leave now. But, Yu Minji was going to say something else when Feng Wu cut him off with a shake of her head. Get Feng Lu out of here and we'll talk about it later. Lady Wang would be here soon to search the house, and when that happened. Get her out of here? Yu Minji nodded. All right. I'll take care of that first and come back to talk to you. Feng Wu wanted to tell him not to come back after getting rid of Feng Lu, but before she could say so, Yu Minji left as quickly as a gust of wind. Feng Wu was speechless. Yu Minji was very pissed as he jumped over the wall of Fallen Star Yard. He wasn't angry at Feng Wu, but himself. How could he have been so stupid? Although he meant well, he had ruined Feng Wu's plan. Judging from the look on her face, she must have found him so annoying. The more he thought about it, the more vexed he became. So, what should he do with Feng Lu? Toss her back to that fire wolf. Yu Minji regretted hurting that wolf so badly. He had ruined the animal's male parts. Sending Feng Lu back there wouldn't change anything. Hence, Yu Minji wandered along the corridor in the manor with Feng Lu in one hand. Wait! Yu Minji heard the groaning and moaning of a couple when he walked past a courtyard. So, someone was doing it there. How about leaving Feng Lu here? At that thought, Yu Minji jumped into the yard, followed the sounds, and entered a room through a window. By then, the couple had finished and were fast asleep. Yu Minji then saw a face he recognized. He only knew a handful of people from the Feng clan, and he happened to run into every single one of them tonight. Chapter 311 I'm doing everyone a favor. Chapter 311 I'm doing everyone a favor. The man sleeping there was none other than Feng Yiran himself. Seeing Feng Lu twisting and moaning in his arms, and Feng Yiran sleeping soundly in bed, Yuminji decided that after hearing what Feng Lu had plotted against Feng Wu, he would get revenge for Feng Wu by leaving Feng Lu here in her brother's bed. Growing up in the dark court, Yuminji had been deeply influenced by the dark and deviant deeds he saw there. He had kept it from Feng Wu, but that didn't make him any kinder or purer in heart. Yuminji moved the woman sleeping next to Feng Yuran to the floor, then tossed Feng Lu onto the bed. He was about to leave when he saw his robe on Feng Lu. His stomach lurched. He had been so close to leaving such an important belonging on Feng Lu. If that happened, he would never be able to explain himself. Yuminji then removed the robe from Feng Lu. He was going to burn it, but he wouldn't do it here. Seeing the naked girl wrap herself around the teenager, and the room was too dark to see the faces clearly, Yuminji's mouth curled into a wicked grin. He left the room immediately after that. Yuminji was so proud of what he had done that he thought he would finally be able to report to Feng Wu and claim credit for himself. Hence, he returned to Feng Wu, looking elated. Feng Wu had an ominous feeling when she saw the gloating look on the teenager's face. You got rid of Feng Lu? Yup. Where? Take a wild guess. Yuminji wanted to whet her appetite. Feng Wu said grumpily, judging by what I know of you so far, you should have thrown her back to the fire wolf. Yuminji rubbed his nose. I didn't. He would have if he hadn't injured that wolf so severely earlier. You didn't? Feng Wu was surprised. I really didn't. Yuminji sounded very pleased. I put her somewhere you'll never guess. Feng Wu looked at Yuminji, finding the teenager rather unreliable. I'll never guess? Feng Wu suddenly had an idea. The 5th courtyard to the north of Fallen Star Yard, with a vermilion iron gate. Did you leave her there? Feng Wu narrowed her eyes. What? Yuminji cried out in surprise. Little Feng Wu, can you read minds? How did you know? Well, I left her in Feng Yuran's bed. Ha 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 ha. Feng Wu was speechless. That's so. I was doing her a favor, said Yuminji matter-of-factly. She's inhaled spring breeze powder. Without relief, she'll implode and die. Who else can help her like that in the Feng clan? Feng Wu was speechless. Without a man to sleep with, she'll die. I was saving her life. Yuminji said presumptuously. I'm doing everyone a favor. Feng Wu was speechless. She dashed out of her room without another word. Feng Wu had thought about getting Feng Yuran involved when she learned about Lady Wang's plan. But while Feng Yuran wasn't a good person, he hadn't tried to kill Feng Wu so far, at least not that Feng Wu knew of. Hence, Feng Wu had left Feng Yuran out. And that was why she had thrown Feng Lu into the firewolf stable. As it turned out, Feng Yuran had been dragged into this after all, and Feng Wu wanted to stop it before it was too late. However, when she snuck into Feng Yuran's courtyard, she heard the unmistakable sounds of a man and a woman doing you-know-what. Chapter 312, Something's Terribly Wrong. Chapter 312, Something's Terribly Wrong. On hearing the sounds, Feng Wu knew that she was too late. Rubbing her nose, Feng Wu quickly returned to Fallen Star Yard before anyone could spot her. Seeing Feng Wu's blushing cheeks, Yuminji knew that Feng Lu had done what the drug was supposed to make her do. So? They're sleeping together, are they? Yuminji gloated. That's what she gets for trying to harm you. I'd like to see her face when she wakes up. Feng Wu smacked her forehead. Flying snow building. Preoccupied, Lady Wang woke up earlier than she usually did, before the sun had fully risen. Slowly opening her eyes, she looked at that pale blue sky outside and smiled a little when she went over her plan in her head. The incense was still burning. Smoke curled up and a faint fragrance filled the air. Lady Wang was in an even better mood. She had no idea that Feng Wu would be so easy to handle this time. She got up and let her maids help her dress. The lilac color of her clothes made her look radiant. Darting a casual look at Feng Yanfeng, who was still fast asleep, Lady Wang grinned malevolently. Just then, the hurried footsteps of a maid came from outside. "Master, my lady, something's wrong." She was a low-ranked maid who worked in Lady Wang's place, and had a very forgettable face. However, no one cared what she looked like at the moment, for everyone was surprised by how flustered she appeared. She was part of Lady Wang's plan, but Feng Yanfeng didn't know that. Waking up with a start, he glared at the maid, whose forehead was covered with sweat. Feng Yanfeng found the maid's face unfamiliar, but didn't think much of it. He was too angry at being woken up like this. Glaring at the maid, he said, "Throw this woman out." "Master, something's wrong." "Something's terribly wrong." The maid blanched and darted a pleading look at Lady Wang. Of course, Lady Wang was going to make this as big a scene as possible. She sat down next to Feng Yanfeng and straightened his clothes with her pretty hands. Meanwhile, she said softly, "My lord, Ruyue needs to be disciplined for shouting all the time, but look at all the sweat on her face. I think something big must have happened. How about we hear her out and then we can decide if we should punish her or not." Feng Yanfeng liked Lady Wang enough to hear her out. At those words, he turned his sharp gaze on Ruyue. "Speak." "Master." Ruyue was shaking with excitement. "I walked past Fallen Star Yard just then and I heard Miss Wu." "Miss Wu?" Feng Yanfeng nearly jumped out of bed. Miss Wu, as in Feng Wu, the once genius whom they had deemed so promising before? Feng Wu's back. Feng Yanfeng hadn't been told. Lady Wang rubbed her forehead. "Yes, they arrived yesterday. I was so exhausted from helping them settle in that I fell asleep before you came back. That's why I haven't told you yet." "And they're living in Fallen Star Yard?" Feng Yanfeng frowned. As the current head of the clan, Feng Yanfeng knew Fallen Star Yard's history better than anyone else, and he knew how dilapidated that place was. Lady Wang smiled bitterly. "I would love to give them a place in the center of the manor, but that way, so many people would walk past their house every day. My lord, as you may know, ever since what happened 5 years ago, Xiao Wu has..." Chapter 313 No. Please stop. Chapter 313 No. Please stop. She can't let it go and I'm worried that she won't be able to handle all the pointing fingers. That's why I let them live in Fallen Star Yard in a remote part of the manor. Feng Yanfeng looked less displeased now. Lady Wang took the opportunity and went on. "My lord, if you don't like that arrangement, I'll move them out of Fallen Star Yard and give them." "That won't be necessary." Feng Yanfeng waved her off. "You did the right thing. Feng Wu is useless now. She is of no help to this family, and she's lucky to even have food on her table. There's no need to give her favorable treatment." Lady Wang looked troubled. "But Xiao Wu may not be happy. Why should we care how she feels?" Feng Yanfeng smiled cruelly. "Does she think she's still the same Feng Wu from 5 years ago?" That settled Lady Wang's mind. Seeing Feng Yanfeng's attitude, she could do a lot of things without hesitation from now on. "Right. What did you say about Miss Wu?" Feng Yanfeng finally remembered that Ruyue was still kneeling there, and he darted a cold glance at her. "Master, something's happened. I saw a man going into Fallen Star Yard, and he went into Miss Wu's bedroom." "What?" Feng Yanfeng almost bolted up. "Are you sure?" "Yes. I saw it with my own eyes. I can swear on my life." Ruyue made her tone very righteous and brave. Feng Yanfeng could no longer stay in bed. He rushed to the door right away. My lord, slow down. Maybe it's just a misunderstanding." Lady Wang tugged at Feng Yanfeng's sleeve and said in a worried tone, "Xiao Wu grew up around us and we know her well. She's a good kid. She'd never do anything to tarnish the reputation of our clan." The more Lady Wang said, the angrier Feng Yanfeng became. "She's been in northern border city for 5 years. Who knows what filthy habits she picked up there? I need to see for myself. Come, let's have a look." Feng Yanfeng threw a robe over his shoulders, then hurried off. Lady Wang and Granny Gui exchanged looks, and both smiled in satisfaction. They hadn't expected it to be so easy to ruin Feng Wu. My lord, wait. My lord, please don't get too cross. We have to watch out for your health. Lady Wang followed Feng Yanfeng out in a hurry. Fallen Star Yard. The yard probably had something against Feng Wu. Feng Lu had only broken the old door yesterday, and the plank in it had only just been replaced before Feng Yanfeng arrived. Standing outside Fallen Star Yard, Feng Yanfeng's anger had subsided a little, and he was able to think. Could it be a misunderstanding? Was Feng Wu that kind of girl? Was it appropriate for him to question her like this just because of something a random maid said? Just as Feng Yanfeng was standing there in hesitation, he heard mumbling inside, which seemed to suggest something erotic. It hurts, sob, hurts, slow down. No, please don't. I can't, no, sob. That was such a seductive voice. Feng Yanfeng felt the blood rush to his head. They were indeed daughter and father, for Feng Yanfeng entered the courtyard in exactly the same manner as Feng Lu. Bang! The door was kicked open. There was no one in the yard. Feng Yanfeng rushed in and kicked the door to a room open. The voice was coming from there. Lady Wang followed him in a hurry, lifting her skirt off the ground. She was panting from all the running. Chapter 3:14 What the hell? Chapter 3:14 What the hell? My lord, please calm down. Xiao Wu only lost her head for a moment. However, Lady Wang was baffled by what she saw. This wasn't what she had in mind. Feng Wu sat in a chair with one sleeve rolled up to her elbow. Qiuling was crouched down by her side and applying a purple potion to Feng Wu's fair wrist. The potion was too dark for them to make out the wound, but judging from Feng Wu's teary eyes, it looked rather painful. Feng Wu wasn't the only one in the room. Her mother and Granny Zhao were also there. The beautiful lady cried with Feng Wu. Holding Feng Wu's hand, she sobbed. Xiao Wu sob. My poor Xiao Wu, why is this happening? What the hell was this? Lady Wang was completely at a loss. What happened to fornication? And what about that man Feng Wu was supposed to be sleeping with? Where was he? Lady Wang felt as if a bucket of cold water had been dumped over her head, and she was chilled to the bone. She stole a glance at Feng Yanfeng, whose face was livid and the look in his eyes indecipherable. He couldn't keep his eyes off Feng Wu's beautiful mother. Lady Wang felt like she was going to lose her mind. Rage rushed through her and she suddenly had the urge to rip off Feng Wu's and the beautiful lady's faces. Feng Wu looked up at Feng Yanfeng with her innocent eyes. Uncle, why are you here? Feng Yanfeng was finally able to shift his gaze away from his sister-in-law. Looking into Feng Wu's innocent, teary eyes, he was utterly embarrassed. Carried away by that maid's words, he was here to catch Feng Wu in the act. Feng Wu blinked at Feng Yanfeng. Uncle, did you hear about my injury and came all the way here to visit me? Yes, that's right. Feng Yanfeng snapped out of his trance and looked like what a gracious uncle should. Xiao Wu, a maid told me about your wounded hand this morning. How are you doing? Does it hurt? Feng Wu nodded weakly at Feng Yanfeng's phony cordiality. It hurts. Feng Yanfeng didn't know what to say after that. Feng Wu then smiled through her tears. But I'm so touched. Uncle, I see that you broke my door because you're worried about me so much. My burnt wrist feels much better now. Feng Yanfeng rubbed his nose. Of course he couldn't admit that he had broken her door because he was so eager to catch the imaginary man. He could only smile and try to make up for it. Xiao Wu, you've just come back and I know you're short of a lot of necessities. I'll tell your aunt to help you with them. She'll make sure you and your widowed mum live here comfortably. Widowed mum? Feng Wu pondered over the expression. Her father was only missing and no one was sure what had happened to him. Was her uncle so eager to come to that conclusion? Feng Wu found those words highly suspicious. However, she still smiled at Feng Yanfeng. Uncle, you're so nice to us. I don't know how we're going to survive without your help. We left northern border city with a lot of belongings, but we ran into some bandits on the way here, and we narrowly escaped death. But our luggage was... The beautiful lady was reminded of all the clothes and jewelry she had lost during the journey, and she wept. She looked as pretty as pear blossoms bathed in the rain, and one felt like throwing their arms around her to comfort her. Chapter 3:15 Quickly. Chapter 3:15 Quickly. Feng Yanfeng couldn't peel his eyes away from the beautiful lady, whose crying had evoked a desire inside him to protect her. With a wave of his hand he said, "I'll have your aunt send you 5,000 taels of silver later so that you can get everything you need to live comfortably." 5,000 taels of silver. That almost gave Lady Wang a heart attack. The idle Lord Feng obviously had zero idea of the costs of running a household. 5,000 silver taels was enough to sustain the entire clan for 2 months. "My lord," Lady Wang was going to interfere, when Feng Yanfeng darted a cold, harsh glance at her, which chilled Lady Wang to the bone. Lady Wang's stomach lurched and she couldn't utter a word. She couldn't believe this. Why hadn't the spring breeze powder worked? Lady Wang darted a questioning look at Granny Gui, asking the latter with her eyes if she had really buried the stuff there. Granny Gui was sick with anxiety. Of course she had. She had done it herself, and she made sure that it was where it should be. Just then, someone cried out outside. There's a man. He's getting away." Ruyue, who had tagged along, almost fainted from what was going on. When no one was looking, she quietly backed out of the room and tried to sneak off. For if she didn't, she wouldn't live to see another sunrise. Lady Wang would get rid of her to tie up the loose ends, and the master would want her dead for delivering false information. Ruyue was going to flee, when she saw a figure dash out of Fallen Star Yard and run away quickly, but not quickly enough to avoid detection. Lady Wang turned around just in time to spot that figure. A man! There really was a man hiding in Fallen Star Yard. Exasperated, Lady Wang grabbed Feng Yanfeng and dragged him along with her. Feng Yanfeng saw no such figure and didn't want to leave. However, Lady Wang was very certain of herself. "Quickly! We'll know what's going on when we catch the guy and interrogate him. Quickly!" Feng Yanfeng had come with some guards, who were all waiting for Feng Yanfeng's instructions. They would follow only their master's command. Feng Yanfeng hesitated. That figure indeed looked suspicious. Was Feng Wu really having inappropriate relations with a man? Or could it have been his sister-in-law? Feng Yanfeng lost his composure at that thought. Maybe he's a thief. Catch him. After that, Feng Yanfeng dashed off, leading the way. Lady Wang was set on ruining Feng Wu's reputation this morning, and she had brought quite a few people with her. Right now, every single one of them followed Feng Yanfeng and Lady Wang out. Fallen Star Yard, which had been boisterous only a moment ago, grew very quiet. "Miss," Qiuling turned to Feng Wu, looking worried. No one but Feng Wu knew the role Yuminji played here, and everyone became very concerned. The beautiful lady was the only exception. She was still holding Feng Wu's arm and weeping non-stop. Feng Wu was speechless. Her mother was the only one here that thought Feng Wu's wrist had really been burnt. Feng Wu turned her attention back to Qiuling. "It's finally getting interesting." Feng Wu smiled confidently. "We shouldn't miss out on the fun." With that, Feng Wu rose to her feet and asked the others, "Anyone interested? Follow me if you are." Granny Zhao smiled mildly. "Qiuling, go with Miss Wu. I'll stay here with my lady." "But..." Chapter 3:16 So Baffled. Chapter 3:16 So Baffled. Feng Wu and Qiuling ran after the crowd. After all the disappointment, Lady Wang had finally gotten the evidence she was hoping for, and she wasn't going to rest until she caught the secret lover. She would interrogate the man under torture until he confessed. Only then could she make Feng Wu's scandal stick. At that moment, that figure disappeared into a courtyard. The courtyard was called Whistling Pines, and it was where Feng Yiran lived. As the most capable man in the crowd, Feng Yanfeng was in the lead, with Lady Wang and the others behind him. Feng Yanfeng narrowed his eyes. Was his wife telling the truth then? Had Feng Wu really done that unspeakable thing? If that was the case, he was going to kill Feng Wu himself. Meanwhile, in Whistling Pines yard, Feng Yiran, who had fallen asleep after a passionate night, still had a smile on his face. Since when was Xue, his concubine maid, this seductive and demanding? He could barely get it up after 2 rounds in a row, but she was still asking for more. More, please, more. Her voice was so enchanting that he thought he was going to melt from it. When he finally began to wake up, Feng Yiran was suddenly struck by something. That voice. That didn't sound like Xue, but more like Feng Lu, his sister. No, what was he thinking? How could he think of Feng Lu at a time like this? Feng Yiran opened his eyes and turned toward the window, trying to see what time it was. His eyes then caught sight of a familiar figure on the floor. A naked girl lay there on her back. She had a slim body, fair skin, and a comely face. It was none other than Xue, his concubine maid. Xue? What was she doing lying on the floor? Wait, if Xue was there, who was he holding in his arms? Feng Yiran's stomach turned and an ominous feeling washed over him. He couldn't even summon the courage to look down. More. I want more, ah! The girl caressed his chest with her slim fingers. Feng Yiran felt sick and got goosebumps all over. He shifted his gaze from her fingers to her wrist, then up her arm, and slowly to her face. Oh God! Feng Yiran heard a rumbling sound in his ears, and he felt all his blood rush to his head. Lying there in his arms was none other than Feng Lu, his sister from the same parents. His biological sister, Feng Lu. At that moment, Feng Yiran's brain stopped working. So he had been sleeping with. Feng Yiran looked down and saw smears of blood on his sheet. He shut his eyes, wishing that he could pass out now. What on earth was going on? Why was Xue on the floor? Why was Feng Lu in his bed? And how could he have done such a thing with Feng Lu? Feng Lu tried to get back into Feng Yiran's arms, but Feng Yiran pushed her away. Agitated as he was, Feng Yiran pushed a little too hard and Feng Lu bumped into the hard wooden headboard. It made her see stars for a moment. Feng Lu opened her sleepy eyes at the pain and gradually woke up. By now, the sun had risen and the room was brightly lit. Hence, Feng Lu saw the face in front of her clearly. It was Feng Yiran. Her own brother. Feng Yiran didn't have any clothes on and was eyeing her with an indecipherable look on his face. Feng Lu looked down and saw that she was as naked as he was. Chapter 3:17 Ah, where are my clothes? Chapter 3:17 Ah, where are my clothes? One look at all the marks all over her body and she knew what had happened. Feng Lu's head went completely blank and she sat there dazed, as if she had been struck by a thunderbolt. A few seconds later, Feng Lu came back to herself and opened her mouth to scream. However, Feng Yiran covered her mouth before she could make any sound. The look in his eyes was cruel and murderous. Do you want to die? Feng Yiran whispered in a threatening voice. Tears rolled down Feng Lu's cheeks. Are you trying to bring disgrace and ruin upon both of us? Feng Lu wailed and shook her head repeatedly. Feng Yiran stared into her eyes. I'm going to let you speak now, but no screaming. Feng Lu nodded. Feng Yiran let go and Feng Lu wrapped herself in the duvet, moving as far away from him as possible. She hissed at Feng Yiran between broken sobs. Why? Why did you do this to me? You've ruined my future. How am I going to marry the crown prince now? Feng Yiran only found her ridiculous. Marry Jun Linyuan? Where did she get that idea from? He snarled back. Look around. This is Whistling Pine's yard and you're in my bed. I was going to ask you, why did you get into my bed in the middle of the night and act like a slut? I thought you were Shui, so I slept with you. How is that my fault? That successfully shut Feng Lu up. She went back to weeping. Feng Yiran said in vexation, What happened has happened and we can't do anything about that now. Pull yourself together. You need to leave before anyone else finds out. Feng Lu wouldn't accept the reality. Feng Wu has to be 1,000 times more miserable than I am now. She has to live in hell. How does Feng Wu have anything to do with this? Feng Yiran was bewildered. Feng Lu smirked. Mother buried spring breeze powder in Feng Wu's yard and I had Kaiwei open up the spiritual beast farm and lure the animals to Fallen Star Yard. Feng Wu is ruined. Feng Yiran frowned. Would someone as clever as Feng Wu walk into a trap that easily? Could what happened to Feng Lu have something to do with Feng Wu? Feng Yiran was still trying to figure it out when he heard shuffling footsteps outside. Thief! Close the door. Close all the doors. No one is leaving this yard. Feng Yiran? Where's Feng Yiran? Judging by the sounds, there were a lot of people coming. Feng Yiran and Feng Lu were dumbfounded. If Feng Lu had put on her clothes and snuck out as soon as she woke up, they wouldn't be stuck here now. However, those people outside were about to come in. Get dressed. Quickly. Feng Yiran freaked out. If someone walked in now and saw the state they were in, both of them would be ruined. Feng Lu was also freaking out. The footsteps moved closer and picked up speed. She was already feeling so much dread to begin with. My skirt? Where's my skirt? God, I can't find my robe. Feng Lu was so flustered that she couldn't do anything but stand around and shed tears. A voice rang out just outside the room at that moment. Where's Feng Yiran? Someone was coming in. Without thinking, Feng Lu jumped onto the bed, lying flat on her stomach and covering herself up with the duvet. Feng Yiran was equally startled. He only had time to throw Shui onto the bed before the door to his room was kicked open. Feng Yanfeng rushed in, followed by everyone else. Feng Yiran was shocked. Lady Wang asked in exasperation, Yiran, where is he? He who? Chapter 318, There's No Thief. Chapter 318, There's No Thief. Feng Yiran blanched. Had his parents heard about what he and Feng Lu had done, and were here to catch them in the act? If that was the case, was he going to be ruined now? Feng Yiran cared for nothing more than his image, and his reputation had always been his biggest concern. The thief! Lady Wang cried out. We followed him all the way here and saw him run into Whistling Pine's yard. We came after him and he was last seen outside your door. He must have entered your room. Feng Yiran clenched his fists. He finally realized that this was a trap aimed at him and Feng Lu. Rising to his feet and throwing a robe around his shoulders, he said diffidently, Mother, you must be mistaken. I saw no such thief. That's not possible. I saw it with my own eyes. Lady Wang wouldn't give up. You must have been asleep and missed him. You lot, search the room. Hiding under the duvet, Feng Lu felt like crying. That was her own mother. Couldn't she just leave? Why did she have to search the room? She would find her own daughter if she kept doing this. Feng Lu wouldn't have been so flustered if it were any normal day. But she was naked now and she was in her brother's bed. If someone lifted the duvet, Feng Lu trembled in anger and exasperation. However, all Lady Wang could think of now was finding that thief and bringing a host of fabricated charges against Feng Wu. No one could persuade her otherwise. Find him. Don't leave any stone unturned. I must find him. Lady Wang burned with rage. Feng Yiran looked at her coldly. Mother, this is my bedroom. Please leave. Feng Wu and Qiuling sauntered in at that moment. After hearing Feng Yiran's words, Feng Wu smiled at Lady Wang. Aunt, there's no thief. You must be mistaken. Lady Wang was furious. She had to catch that thief. My lady, we've searched the entire Whistling Pines yard, and we found no one. A guard came in from outside and informed Lady Wang in a low voice. My lady, we've searched the bedroom. There's no thief here, another guard reported. Feng Wu smiled. Aunt, see? There's no thief. It's really just a misunderstanding. Feng Yanfeng hesitated. Was Feng Wu telling the truth? Was there no such thief? Searching his memory, he realized that he hadn't seen any such figure himself, but only thought there was one because his wife insisted. Lady Wang felt uneasy. If she couldn't find the thief, the others would think that she had plotted against Feng Wu's family, and that was an accusation she didn't want to be associated with. Feng Yanfeng frowned. Well, since we didn't find any thief, it must be a misunderstanding. Everyone, go back to whatever you were doing. After that, he walked out first. The rest of the servants and guards followed him out. But not Lady Wang. The look her husband gave her was filled with disappointment when he left. At that thought, Lady Wang turned to stare at the duvet on the bed. That wasn't right. Iran was up and Xue, his concubine maid, was sleeping on the other side of the bed. Why did it look like there was something under the duvet? An idea struck Lady Wang. It was the thief. It had to be him. He had hidden under the duvet, and that was why no one had found him. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.